Why do dragons appear in the myths of civilizations that never met, from the mist-shrouded mountains of China where the Lung calls down rain to the volcanic islands of the Philippines, where Bakunawa devours the moon, from the storm-lashed highlands of Scotland, haunted by the Baethir, to the sun-scorched ruins of Greece, stalked by the Hydra dragons, are everywhere. But here's the paradox: no culture ever proved they were real, and yet they all told the same kind of story. Fire-breathing beasts, sky serpents, scaled leviathans that guard treasure or swallow the sun. Could it be that ancient peoples across the world all imagine the same creature by chance? Or is there something deeper buried beneath centuries of soil and story? What if these legends weren't pure fiction but encrypted memories of real events? What if the bones of dragons were actually mastodon fossils? What if the fiery breath of monsters was inspired by volcanic vents in Turkey which still spit flames on the slopes where Chimera was said to roam? What if entire Chinese villages once mined dragon bones from hills, only for modern paleontologists to discover they were digging up dinosaur fossils? Before we dive in, if you love mysteries like this, hit that like button and subscribe to join our journey through the incredible crossroads of myth and science. And tell us in the comments, do you think dragons once existed in some form, or are they just products of humanity's collective imagination? Welcome to geomythology, a field where legends aren't just stories but geological clues. In this journey we'll dig up the fossilized roots of dragon myths, uncover why our brains are wired to fear them, and reveal how fire-breathing monsters may have helped humanity make sense of storms, meteors, and even extinction itself. This isn't fantasy. It's our forgotten prehistory told in the language of dragons. Have you ever looked a dragon straight in the eye? Picture this. You're standing in the midst of a bustling festival. Golden lights flicker against the night sky and the drums thunder like rolling storms. Suddenly a colossal dragon slithers into view, its blazing red eyes gleaming in the dark. You can almost hear its breath, feel the heat radiating from its coiling body, though you know perfectly well it is nothing more than paper and bamboo. Yet your heart beats faster. Why does a creature that has never truly existed stir something so deeply within us? But what if I told you that dragons do exist? Not in caves or fairy tale castles, but in our memory and every fragment of human story, woven through every culture and every corner of the world. Even if you've never met them, never set foot in those faraway lands, dragons were there in ancient Babylon. They lurked along the distant banks of the Nile. They lived in the rock carvings of the Maya civilization. And even the Inuit of the frozen Arctic, in a land without a single serpent, told stories of dragons. How could a creature that isn't real cast such a vast shadow over the human imagination? Open a book of Norse mythology and there is Fafnir the dragon who guards his hoard, his poisonous breath cloaking him in choking smoke. Watch a film about St. George and you'll see a monstrous bat-winged dragon spewing fire hot enough to melt steel. Turn the brittle pages of an ancient Chinese scroll and you'll meet the benevolent Dragon King, ruler of wind and rain. Pause before a stone carving in Mexico and your gaze will meet Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, the very creator of humankind. They're astonishingly different, some ferocious and evil, others sacred and noble. Yet beneath these differences lies the same silhouette, an immense reptilian form, a being beyond the bounds of ordinary imagination. It is as though humanity across every age and every land has conspired to tell the same story, the story of dragons. It seems unbelievable, doesn't it? Yet look closer, legends were never meant merely for entertainment. They were the way our ancestors recorded the world long before books existed. Perhaps dragons are the memories of our forebears born from terrifying natural disasters, erupting volcanoes, shuddering earthquakes, strange fossilized bones scattered across the land, things the ancients could not possibly explain. But that is only one explanation. It may be, as modern anthropologists suggest, that dragons are a composite image of our ancestors' greatest foes. A colossal creature embodying the serpent, the predatory bird and the savage beast, all the primeval enemies humankind once had to overcome in order to survive. Dragons are not just stories. They are maps. They are memories. They are fragments of humanity's deepest, oldest mind. And the deeper you dig, the greater the questions become. Why did cultures across the world, separated by oceans and ages, all imagine such a similar being? Could it be that our ancestors once truly saw something so powerful, so unforgettable that it etched itself into every civilization's memory, only to fade beneath the dust of time? And now you stand before an ancient door, heavy with age, and dust its surface, engraved with the figure of a dragon. Your fingers brush against the worn carving. In that instant, a gust of wind stirs, the door creaks open. You do not know what lies beyond, but you understand this much: your journey has only just begun. Are you ready to seek the answer? Because from this moment on, the greatest secret in human history rests in your hands. Imagine standing on the sandy banks of the Euphrates in ancient Mesopotamia on a dark and foreboding night. The waves crash violently, the wind howls, as though some colossal creature were rising from the depths of the sea. In Babylonian legend, that creature was called Tiamat, the primordial goddess of the salt seas, yet over time she came to be envisioned as a monstrous dragon, the embodiment of primeval chaos. According to ancient tales, Tiamat birthed terrifying sea monsters, then rose in fury to wage war against the gods themselves. Marduk, the god of storms and order, confronted her in battle. With tempests and nets of wind, he ensnared her, piercing her heart with a deadly arrow. Splitting her vast body in two, he used one half to form the heavens, and the other to create the earth mountains, clouds, rain, and the twin rivers Euphrates and Tigris. Through this myth, the ancients crafted a vivid symbolic story to explain the origins of the cosmos. But if you place yourself in the sandals of a villager on the Mesopotamian floodplain, it becomes easy to understand why they imagine Tiamat as a fearsome dragon. Each year they endured devastating floods, and at times catastrophic surges that swept away crops, homes, and entire lives. With no science to explain such destruction, they attributed it to a supernatural force, Tiamat. She became humanity's memory of the ocean's wrath, given the form of a dragon, so that her story could be told and retold across generations. On the ground, archaeologists have uncovered deep layers of flood-borne sediment blanketing Middle Mesopotamian ruins, evidence of great floods dating as far back as the 3rd millennium BCE. Many sites contain thick deposits of silt, sometimes half a metre deep, likely remnants of historical floods preserved in cultural memory and transformed into myth. Tiamat then was not a baseless invention, but a figure awakened from humanity's collective memory, born of awe and fear at the unexplainable forces of nature. Picture it more vividly: someone recounts a great flood. You stand on the riverbank watching the water rise until it swallows the rooftops of your neighbours' homes. Everything vanishes within hours. No one knows why. The next morning, dead fish float in the shallows. Years later, as the story is retold, Tiamat emerges an immense dragon-like being, a symbol of the ocean's overwhelming power and destruction. Delving deeper into the Enuma Elish, Mesopotamia's great creation epic, we see Marduk using storms, floods, and the weapons of wind to defeat Tiamat, a clear reflection of humanity's attempts to control flooding through levees and canals. The myth becomes an allegory of order conquering chaos, just as people sought to tame the rivers. So the next time you see a dragon carved into ancient ruins, temples or murals in Mesopotamia, remember this: it may not simply be fantasy, but a way for ancient people to record the brutal natural events they could not comprehend, giving them the face of a dragon so they could pass down the tale that the sea once roared like a monstrous beast. Doesn't Tiamat now seem less like an imagined creature and more like a trace of collective memory, an echo of floods long past transformed over millennia into the dragons of legend? If so, you've already stepped onto the path of uncovering the deeper purpose behind dragon mythology. Did you know that in ancient Greece there was a tale of dragon's teeth that may not have been pure myth? Cadmus, the hero of Thebes, slew a fearsome dragon that guarded a sacred spring. Following the counsel of the goddess Minerva, he sewed the dragon's teeth into the earth. And then, in a marvel beyond belief, from each tooth sprang a fully armed warrior ready for battle. The story appears in the literary histories recorded by Ovid, yet its symbolism seems to reflect a real phenomenon: the discovery of massive mastodon fossils. On the Greek island of Chios, archaeologists have unearthed numerous mastodon skeletons, especially the enormous molars with deep, sharp ridges, exactly the kind of remains and ancient people might have imagined to be the teeth of the dragons. Without knowledge of dinosaurs or prehistoric elephants, these fossils became physical proof of mythical beasts. When Cadmus sowed dragon's teeth, the tale served as a metaphor, planting the memory of a distant past, a way for people to explain the strange relics they had dug from the ground. Picture yourself at that very site. You pick up a massive fossilised tooth, heavy, sharp unlike anything you have ever seen from a living creature. You do not know it belongs to a mastodon. All you know is that it must have come from a colossal beast. And when you hear the story that each tooth could give rise to a warrior, the myth does not feel like an exaggeration. It feels entirely plausible, a vivid way to preserve the memory of something that science could not yet explain. Even more intriguing archaeological studies reveal that many parts of Greece, especially the island of Chios, were once thought of in folklore as wild dragon lands. Locals told of finding dragon bones buried in the earth, believing these places had once been lairs of fearsome creatures. In reality, they had stumbled upon mastodon fossils. The story of Cadmus became a symbolic explanation, a way to preserve a fragment of prehistoric memory in mythic form. Hearing this tale today, we can recognise something profound. Legends were the earliest notes our ancestors ever wrote, recorded not with ink, but with images and the spoken word. They did not know what a mastodon was, but they held those fossilised teeth in their hands and shaped a story that fit their experience and their belief. So next time you encounter ancient artefacts or Greek myths about dragons, pause and ask yourself, could this be a memory? Transformed a story born the day someone unearthed a mastodon's tooth. What seems like mere fantasy may in fact be the trace of a human encounter with nature, a memory etched into legend to endure for millennia. Imagine climbing a barren rocky mountain in Lycia, western Turkey. As night falls and the wind rustles softly through the pine trees, patches of stone on the mountainside flicker with small flames, dozens of glowing tongues of fire, like candles burning in the cold darkness. These flames never die. By day they burn faintly, but at night they blaze bright, a natural lighthouse glowing halfway up the mountain. The ancients called this place Ionatus, meaning fire rock. In truth, it is natural gas seeping from the earth, burning ceaselessly for thousands of years. It was on this very slope from these eternal flames that the legend of Chimera was born, a monstrous creature with 3 heads. The head of a lion, the mid-body of a goat, and a serpent's tail that breathed fire. The Greeks told of Chimera as a fearsome, fire-spewing beast that ravaged the land of Lycia, until Bellerophon astride the winged horse Pegasus struck it down with a spear tipped with molten lead, which he drove into the creature's flaming throat. Ancient naturalists speculated that Chimera's myth arose directly from these unquenchable fires, an awe-inspiring phenomenon that made people believe a fire-breathing monster truly lived beneath the mountain. Indeed, Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century CE, recorded that flames burned there day and night so bright they guided Greek sailors like a natural beacon. Now picture the overwhelming sensation of standing before such a sight, the eternal flames dancing in the darkness, wisps of smoke rising, the faint smell of gas in the air. It feels as if the mountain itself is alive, breathing fire through its cracks. Locals believed Chimera still lurked beneath the rocks, that the flames were its very breath. The imagery of lion, goat and serpent may have drawn from the land's own symbols. Lions once roamed here. Goats climbed the rocky slopes, and serpents and scorpions hid in deep crevices. You stand there feeling the heat on your skin, hearing the soft pops of burning gas. You realise this is not merely a natural wonder, it is reality transformed into story, a way to explain what the eye could see but the mind could not comprehend. Chimera was never just a figment of imagination. It was humanity's attempt to name the terrifying power of earth and fire they could not understand. When the ancient hero thrust his spear to kill Chimera, the myth became a metaphor, humankind asserting order over chaotic nature. And even today the flames of Ionatus still burn. Travellers climb to this place, reaching out to touch the warm rock, where the gas still escapes, where the tiny tongues of fire scatter across the night. They still hear whispers in the dark. This is the breath of Chimera, a legend that has never died, still alive in the fire's glow, telling the story of a dragon breathing fire from the heart of the earth to anyone willing to listen. Picture yourself standing on the fertile plains of Sichuan, China, thousands of years ago. There are no fossils in museums, no scientists with chisels, only farmers, and the stories passed from mouth to ear. Beneath the dark, rich soil, someone stumbles upon a massive bone. No one knows what creature it came from, but they believe without question that it is the bone of a dragon. Ancient records tell us that from the Eastern Han Dynasty onward, the Chinese used these fossil fragments as a prized medicinal ingredient called long gu, literally dragon bone. The earliest mention appears in the Shennong Benkao Jing around 100 CE. Long gu was believed to calm the spirit, cure anxiety, treat insomnia, epilepsy, mild fevers, and even regulate the blood. The bones were ground into powder brewed into medicine for kings and commoners alike, always called dragon bones, never suspected to be the fossils of mastodons, rhinoceroses, or the three-toed horse of long-extinct ages. Fast forward to the early 20th century, Chinese scholars and families combating malaria stumbled across dragon bones for sale in apothecary markets. Upon closer inspection, they discovered that these were not mythical relics, but the fossilized remains of prehistoric animals, mastodons, woolly rhinoceroses, hipparions, even stegodons, creatures that had roamed the earth millions of years ago. More than 20,000 Longi specimens were eventually classified, representing 9 groups of Cenozoic fossil mammals. For millennia, our ancestors unearthed strange bones, scales, or teeth, unlike anything they had ever seen. They named them dragon bones. They told each other that these were relics of dragons imbued with powers to soothe the mind, lower fevers, and restore balance to the body. People believed, and traditional medical texts recorded it with solemn reverence. Then in the late 19th century, scholar Wang Yurong purchased a piece of dragon bone and realized it bore ancient inscriptions. It was in fact a fragment of oracle bone script, the earliest known form of Chinese writing and the very foundation of the modern Chinese script. Centuries later, in 2024-2025, Chinese and international paleontologists uncovered fossils of Dinocephalosaurus orientalis, a 5-metre-long marine reptile that lived 240 million years ago in present-day Guizhou. Its elongated, serpentine body and frilled neck evoke the image of the traditional Chinese dragon. Though not a dinosaur, its strange shape captured the imagination, echoing the creatures of legend. Now imagine holding a fragment of longu in your hand, tracing the ridges, the scratches etched into it over millions of years. You realise you never needed to see a living dragon to understand why your ancestors once said they saw dragons beneath the earth. They had seen fossils, and through story they shaped the dragon you grew up knowing, a long-bearded, scaled being of supernatural might. Through longu and Dinocephalosaurus we see something profound. The dragon is not merely a fantasy creature, it is an image born from humanity's earliest encounters with fossils long before the concepts of dinosaur or paleontology existed. People named what they found, told stories about it, and passed those tales down for millennia. Beneath the myth lies a real trace of the past, one that at last has come to light. You see now, dragon legends are far more than stories told around a fire. They are tangible traces, messages left from millions of years ago, written in the earth, in fire in the sea, and in mysterious teeth buried deep in the soil. From Tiamat, the raging dragon of the sea, to the warriors sprouting from Cadmus's dragon's teeth, to Chimera, whose eternal flames still burn on the rocky slopes of Lycia, to the dragon bones unearthed by ancient Chinese farmers, all of them remind us of one truth: dragons are the living memory of this planet. But is it truly enough to say that fossils, fire, and ancient floods explain why dragons appear in the imagination of humankind across every corner of the world, even in lands that never knew such phenomena? Or do dragons conceal another secret one, buried deep in the human mind and instinct, something primal, ancient, and impossible to erase? Keep going, for just ahead the mystery of dragons will take you down to an even deeper layer, where dragons are no longer memories of the earth, but memories written into the very instincts of humankind. Have you ever wondered why, even knowing with absolute certainty that dragons never existed, humanity cannot stop telling their stories, fearing them and dreaming of them in the most primal depths of sleep? Picture this. You lie peacefully in the safety of your home, yet suddenly you wake with a start, your heart pounding, breath quick and shallow, because in your dream you saw a colossal dragon soaring across the sky. But you're not the first to have such a dream. Your ancestors millions of years ago felt the very same fear. Something deep within your mind has awakened a primordial memory that was never written down. Perhaps dragons never came from the world outside at all. Perhaps they have always lived within us in the deepest shadows of the human mind. Come with me now. Let us step into that darkness together. You're standing in a primordial forest tens of thousands of years in the past. Sunlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy, falling in faint flickering beams upon the damp forest floor. The distant calls of birds echo through the trees, yet you feel no comfort, no safety. Something is moving softly beneath the carpet of fallen leaves. A faint rustle closer now. Your heartbeat quickens, though you do not yet know why. Then another sound cuts through the air, sharper this time, a thin, chilling hiss as something slithers through the brittle, dry leaves. Your throat tightens, cold sweat trickles down your spine, and then you see it. Two unblinking eyes, small and merciless, the smooth, glistening scales of a green snake gliding effortlessly across the forest floor. You don't have time to think. Your body reacts first. Your heart races, your breath shortens, and your muscles tense, primed to flee or fight. This is not the first snake you've ever encountered, yet the fear is overwhelming. Why? The answer lies deep within your brain, rooted not in personal experience but in millions of years of human evolution. Your ancestors survived by learning to fear real threats. Venomous snakes hidden underfoot. Raptors with razor talons circling above predators lurking in the shadows. Those who possessed this fear lived to pass it on. Over countless generations, that fear became more than individual memory. It became instinct etched into the subconscious of every human being. Even if you have never been bitten by a snake, never been attacked by a raptor, you still feel an inexplicable dread at the sound of a hiss, the sudden rush of a shadow overhead, or the glint of a predatory gaze watching from afar. This is no mere imagination. It is nature's built-in alarm system, a survival mechanism inherited from those who endured the brutal wilds for hundreds of thousands of years. And now, standing in this ancient forest, you realize something profound. The fear you feel in the presence of the snake is not new. It is the oldest memory you carry, not written in books or passed down in words, but encoded in your body, your mind, and the blood that runs through your veins. You drift into sleep, but no peace awaits you there. In your dream, you find yourself lost in a primordial valley shrouded in unbroken darkness with no sunlight to guide you. Suddenly a sound erupts, the heavy, thunderous beating of enormous wings, so powerful that the very sky seems to tremble. Out of the night, a colossal shape plummets toward you, and for the first time, you come face to face with the creature that has haunted humanity's imagination for countless ages, a dragon real and alive. The first thing you notice is its body, long, sinuous, covered in smooth, glistening scales, supple and cold like the hide of a serpent. A chill shoots down your spine, for in that instant your most primal instincts ignite. This is venom, this is death. The ancient fear of snakes etched into the human brain over millions of years awakens in you without mercy. But the terror does not stop there. The dragon unfurls its vast wings, spreading them wide in a menacing display. You see every detail, the massive wings, their thin membranes stretched taut like those of a giant bat, or like the deadly talons of a prehistoric raptor circling the skies above your ancestors. Another ancient memory surges forth, fear of the predator that strikes from above, swift and lethal. Your forebears once looked to the skies with dread, knowing that at any moment a colossal bird of prey could descend and snatch one of their own. Now that memory stands before you embodied in this monstrous form. As the dragon lowers itself, you see its powerful legs, thick and muscular, tipped with razor-sharp claws. Its talons are the unmistakable mark of the apex predator, an ever-present threat that stalked early humans from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to kill. You know instantly that this creature cannot be fought nor outrun. It is death itself made flesh, the perfect culmination of everything your ancestors feared to survive. But the nightmare is still not complete. From deep within the beast's throat comes a guttural, resonant growl, and then an inferno bursts forth, searing and unrelenting, as though it breathes pure destruction. Fire, the ultimate force beyond human control, completes the terror. This is nature's fury unleashed. The dragon you face is no random monster. It is a creature born of the deepest recesses of the human mind, forged from every fear your ancestors ever knew. It is serpent, it is predator, it is the hunter in the sky, and more than that, it is the perfect embodiment of terror itself, an evolutionary nightmare humanity has carried unwittingly since the dawn of its existence. You sit among the Inuit, surrounded by the endless frost of the far north. The wind slices through thick layers of hide clothing like a blade, yet the fire crackling at the centre of the circle offers just enough warmth to stave off the brutal cold. An elder begins to speak his voice, mingling with the soft hiss and pop of the flames. From the sky it descended, a monstrous creature, its vast wings blotting out the moon, its eyes burning bright in the night, its teeth as sharp as spears carved from ice. It hunted those who strayed too far from the herd, carrying terror with it across the white expanse. You listen intently, yet a strange realization dawns on you. You have lived in this frozen land since birth, as have all your ancestors before you. None of them has ever seen a snake. None has ever encountered a giant reptile. So how is it that the elder speaks of a creature shaped like a dragon, the very image of the primal serpent that haunted your dream? This is the great paradox. Even without ever seeing a snake or even hearing of one, your ancestors could still imagine a long, sinuous beast with razor claws and a terrifying presence from the sky. A creature eerily similar to the dragons found in myths across the world. How could fear of a creature no one here had ever encountered become so deeply ingrained in the human mind, even in this remote icy land? Perhaps the answer lies within you. You begin to realize that such fear never needed a real creature to exist. It is an instinct etched into the human nervous system through millions of years of evolution. Even if you grow up in a land blanketed by snow, a place untouched by serpents, that fear still flows in your blood, lying dormant in your subconscious, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Because dragons in every culture, whether in the frozen Arctic or the distant tropical forests, share the same form, massive reptilian, fierce, capable of flight and deadly to humankind. Such pattern cannot be mere coincidence. It is a collective memory coded deep within the human brain since the earliest days of our species, a universal blueprint of fear. You look up at the Arctic sky. There is nothing above you but the gleam of stars over the ice, and yet the sense of unease lingers. Perhaps dragons never needed to appear before your eyes because they have always lived silently and powerfully in the deepest recesses of the human Nankia mind, even here in a land where snakes have never existed. Try to remember the very first time you heard a story about dragons when you were still a child. You may not recall who told it nor the details of the tale itself, but you remember the feeling vividly, a strange, powerful fear, even though you knew you had never seen a real dragon. In that moment, something invisible, ancient and hidden seemed to awaken deep inside your mind, as if it had always been there, simply waiting for the right time to stir. Have you ever wondered why, despite never having witnessed one, you can so easily picture a dragon, a creature that embodies everything most fearsome? Its long, sinuous body like a venomous serpent, vast wings stretched wide like the shadow of a primeval raptor, claws and fangs like the prowling beasts of the night, and fiery breath as fierce and untamed as nature's wrath itself. A creature like this should feel alien, unimaginable, and yet somehow you recognize it instantly. You fear it instinctively even from the very first story. That is because dragons are not mere inventions of human imagination. They are the perfect embodiment of all the fears your ancestors endured in order to survive over millions of years. Those fears never vanished, they sank deep into the human mind encoded in neurons, becoming an inseparable part of your brain hardwired into you from the moment of birth. Think about it, why is it that fairy tales across every culture separated by oceans and millennia always feature some form of dragon? Why do children everywhere instantly understand that such a creature is dangerous without ever being taught? So, because the image of the dragon has always existed in humanity's most primal memory, beyond imagination, beyond personal experience. It is a collective memory, an echo from the very process of human evolution itself. At this moment, as you think about dragons, you're not merely recalling a creature from folklore. You're touching the deepest part of yourself, an ancient memory, indelible and enduring, passed down from the earliest of your ancestors. Dragons in truth never came from the outside world, they have always lived within you dormant, yet ever ready to awaken a fear carried through millions of years of evolution. Perhaps every time you tell a story about dragons, you are in fact awakening a fragment of that deep memory, one that humanity has always carried whether we realise it or not. And maybe the creature you believe you have never seen has in a way always been there inside you. Have you ever considered that the dragon you fear might actually be you? Imagine standing before a great mirror, its surface clouded by the dust of ages. You reach out and wipe it clean, and on the other side appears a terrifying figure. Cold, unblinking eyes, sharp, gleaming scales, menacing claws poised to strike. You recoil until you realise that the figure is your own reflection. The dragon before you is not merely a monster, it is everything you and your society have despised, worshipped, or struggled to overcome. It is the chaos that gods once subdued, the guilt buried deep within your soul that you strive to erase, or perhaps it is the sacred emblem of the raw power of nature you have always revered. The dragon you thought was an alien beast has always been far closer than you imagined, and now standing before that reflection, are you ready to look into its eyes and finally understand yourself? You stand on the edge of the ancient world. Before you stretches a black, raging ocean, its waves heaving as if furious at the fragile spark of life that has just taken hold on land. From the depths below comes a terrible roar, and then she rises, Tiamat, primordial goddess of the salt seas, the living embodiment of pure chaos. Her colossal body surges like storm-tossed waves, her blazing crimson eyes burning with ancient wrath as she spreads her vast arms, casting a shadow over the newborn world. She's not merely a creature, she's darkness before light, chaos before order. Opposite her stands Marduk, god of storms. His gaze strikes like lightning through the night, as he draws his bow, raising his voice in a challenge that shakes the heavens. You witness one of the greatest battles ever told. Marduk's arrow flies its brilliance, piercing Tiamat's darkness. The goddess's vast body collapses, chaos subdued. From Tiamat's slain form, Marduk fashions the heavens and the earth, light and shadow, thus order is born. Suddenly the scene shifts. You now stand atop Mount Olympus. The Greek sky darkens from blue to a foreboding black as heavy clouds blanket the world. The ground beneath you quakes violently as Typhon emerges, a monstrous being with 100 dragon heads, writhing upward each breath like a devastating storm. Typhon roars, a terrifying herald of chaos, once again threatening to consume the world. From the heavens a blinding bolt of lightning strikes. Zeus descends ablaze with divine fury, his hand grasping the weapon of the gods, the thunderbolt which he hurls straight into Typhon's heart. The dragon heads shriek and thrash in rage before collapsing into silence. The earth steadies, the sky clears. In that moment, you understand Typhon is no mere monster. He is chaos itself, destruction incarnate, the shadow that every civilization must conquer in order to survive. The vision shifts once more. Now you stand upon the sacred riverbanks of ancient India. Before you coils Vritra, the mighty dragon who has bound the world's precious waters within the mountains. His scales shimmer, his breath a merciless drought, his eyes the embodiment of humanity's despair for life-giving rain. Suddenly the beat of war drums echoes across the land. Indra, god of thunder, strides forth wielding the indestructible Vajra. A battle of cataclysmic force erupts as Indra strikes blow after crushing blow upon Vritra. At last Vritra falls. The waters rush free, pouring into the valleys to restore life to the world. And in that moment you understand the dragon is the deepest symbol of primordial chaos, and the gods charged with the task of creating order must always rise to fight against it. The war between gods and dragons is not merely myth. It is the eternal struggle between light and darkness order, and chaos, life and death, a battle that you and all of humanity continue to fight every single day. You stand before the mouth of a vast lightless cavern. From deep within, thick black smoke coils outward, heavy with the stench of sulphur and ash, as though this place is a gateway to the underworld itself. You know exactly what awaits inside, not just any dragon, but the embodiment of everything cruel and vile that humanity has ever had to face. Suddenly you remember Hydra, the monster that Hercules once fought. It bore not one, but countless heads, and for every head severed, 2 more would instantly grow in its place. Hydra was never just a grotesque beast. It symbolized the persistence of sin, insatiable greed, and evils that endlessly renew themselves in every person in every society. Hercules prevailed only when he burned each wound to its roots, as if to say that only by scorching evil to its very core can virtue and justice be restored. Then you recall Leviathan, the colossal dragon of Jewish tradition that lurked in the abyssal depths. Leviathan stood for absolute chaos, for the evil, hidden beneath a deceptively still surface, waiting for the perfect moment to rise and shatter the sacred order. It is a warning that beneath the veneer of civilization there is always a dark force capable of awakening at any time, one you must never ignore if you hope to protect what is good and just. And you hear echoes of the Book of Revelation describing a great red dragon, the very embodiment of Satan, the ultimate adversary who challenges faith and tempts humankind toward corruption and ruin. This dragon does not merely represent destruction, it is a metaphor for temptation, cruelty, and moral collapse, a force that humanity must battle endlessly to preserve the light. To fight the red dragon is to confront the darkness within one's own soul, a battle whose only reward is salvation and moral clarity. Now standing at the cavern's edge, you realize that you are not simply facing a mythical beast. You are confronting the darkest parts of yourself and of society, the greed, the cruelty, the injustices that must be overcome to safeguard light and life. The dragon within the cave is not just a monster, it is a mirror reflecting everything you and your world fear most. Everything you must defeat in order to move forward. You tighten your grip on the sword in your hand. Your heart pounds not just with fear but with the knowledge that this battle has never been merely myth. It is the eternal moral struggle, the responsibility you cannot turn away from, bound to the very fact of your existence. And as you step into the cavern's darkness, you understand that you are embarking on the most arduous journey of all, fighting the unending dragon within your own soul. You find yourself in the midst of an Eastern festival, surrounded by an atmosphere both serene and reverent. The night sky glitters with lantern light, while the rhythmic pounding of drums and the crackle of fireworks merge into a heartbeat that seems to belong to an entire people. Around you, the crowd watches the heavens in hushed anticipation, awaiting the arrival of a legendary being, a colossal dragon, crafted from paper and brilliantly coloured fabric, weaving gracefully through the glow of fireworks. And then it strikes you this dragon is nothing like the fearsome creatures of the tales you once heard. It does not roar or terrify. Instead, it soars lightly and fluidly, gliding like water, drifting like cloud. The people around you are not afraid. They stand with hands clasped in reverence, their eyes filled with hope and gratitude. In the East, dragons have never been monsters to be slain. They are sacred beings, symbols of power, fortune, and harmony with nature. In Chinese culture, the dragon long is the very embodiment of nature's life-giving force. It governs wind and rain, rivers and seas, acting as a celestial emissary that nurtures crops, ensures prosperity, and protects the well-being of humankind. It is revered not as a foe, but as a royal and moral symbol, a guardian as much as a benefactor. You glance at the banners fluttering in the wind, each emblazoned with a golden dragon on a crimson field. These are ancient emblems of imperial dynasties across the East, from Japan to Korea to Vietnam, where the dragon was honoured as the protector of royalty, a sign of divine connection between humanity and the cosmos. Majestic, yet harmonious with nature, the dragon was seen as the bringer of life, rain, and abundance. As the villagers around you begin the ritual prayers for rain, you feel the profound faith they place in this sacred being. To them, the dragon is no enemy to be vanquished, but a noble companion, a benevolent deity who shields and sustains them. Their prayers are soft, yet deeply earnest hopes whispered for peace-fertile fields and lives lived in harmony with the natural world. And as the paper dragon undulates through the night sky, illuminated by bursts of fireworks and accompanied by the thunder of drums, you finally understand the profound difference between East and West. The Eastern dragon has never been a symbol of sin or chaos to be destroyed. It is hope incarnate, a bridge between humanity and the universe, between nature and mortal life. In that moment, as you watch the dragon dance among the stars, your heart feels unburdened, as though you have touched something sacred, peaceful and profoundly good, the very essence of harmony itself. You stand in a silent room facing two great paintings placed side by side, each depicting a dragon, yet each telling an entirely different story. The painting on the left captures a fierce battle. A Western knight in gleaming armour throws all his strength into the fight against a ferocious dragon. His eyes burn with unwavering resolve as he grips a steel sword intent on one goal alone, to slay the monster before him. The dragon rages violently, the embodiment of everything the hero must conquer: chaos, evil temptation, and moral downfall. In this image, the dragon is a metaphor for the darkness that society must defeat to protect virtue and survive. You turn to the painting on the right and see a completely different scene. A peaceful eastern village stretches beneath a twilight sky. Villagers stand in long rows, bowing reverently as a dragon glides gracefully above them. Here the dragon is majestic, serene, harmonious. It is not fierce or threatening, but instead a sacred symbol of peace, prosperity, and perfect balance between humanity and nature. The faces of the people shine with faith, hope, and respect, and you realize that to them the dragon is noble and benevolent, the embodiment of their highest social ideals. Taking a step back, you gaze at both paintings again, and suddenly something becomes clear. A dragon has never had a fixed meaning. Its significance depends entirely on the society that imagined it. To the West, dragons became emblems of chaos and sin because their cultures told stories of moral struggle, of heroes confronting the darkness within themselves. To the East, dragons became revered creatures of blessing and power because those societies valued harmony, respect for nature, and the benevolent strength of the natural world. Standing before these two paintings, you understand that you're also looking into a mirror. The dragon has never existed apart from you. It is an image shaped by your values, beliefs, and fears, and by those of the society you live in. A dragon can be the greatest enemy to overcome or the most revered guardian to honour. It has always been defined by you. But one question remains unanswered. Perhaps the things humanity fears most and the things humanity cherishes most are both reflected in this mythical creature. Perhaps every dragon, whether fearsome or divine, is a way for us to see ourselves more clearly, more honestly than ever before. You take one last look at the two paintings and quietly ask yourself, what would the dragon you see when you close your eyes reveal about who you truly are? Have you ever wondered why across East and West, throughout every era of history, humanity, though never meeting as one, has always told stories of dragons? We like to think we understand dragons, but do we truly? A dragon is not merely a creature of myth. It is a golden key that unlocks the heart of every culture on Earth. For as long as humans have existed wherever they have lived, dragons have appeared as cultural truths, majestic on an emperor's throne, terrifying before a knight's sword, or revered on the walls of ancient stone temples. But why dragons? Why not some other creature? Because the dragon is the clearest mirror of a civilization's values, its beliefs and its deepest fears. When we look upon the image of a dragon, are we not in truth looking at ourselves and at the culture we live in? This is not merely the story of a mythical beast. It is the story of humanity itself, a story not written in ink, but in the history, culture, and enduring faith of billions of people across the world. You stand in the vast courtyard of the Forbidden City as dawn breaks. The first rays of sunlight from the east pierce through these sweeping upturned eaves, casting a brilliant golden glow over each glazed tile as though the entire palace has been draped in a robe of pure gold. Around you everything is still, as if holding its breath in anticipation of something sacred. Your footsteps echo softly through the silence. Passing through an ornate red wooden door, you enter the grand hall. Before you stands an imposing throne set upon a high stone dais, surrounded by colossal pillars intricately carved with winding dragons. As you step closer, it feels as if you have crossed into a realm beyond the mortal world. The dragons carved around the throne glare downward, not ferocious, but radiating such commanding authority that you instinctively bow your head. You lift your gaze. The dragon's long, sinuous body twists like an unending river. Each golden scale is meticulously carved, shimmering as if gilded with sunlight. Its horns curve upward, reaching as though to bridge the earth with the infinite sky. Its open mouth seems to breathe clouds and mist, a silent affirmation that this is the creature holding dominion over heaven and earth, wielding supreme power over the fate of all beings. Upon the throne rests a dragon robe embroidered with a 5-clawed dragon, its golden silk threads glinting in the morning light. In that moment you can almost see the Emperor himself, serene, resolute, one hand resting lightly on an armrest carved into the shape of a dragon's head. Every gesture exudes the absolute authority of the Son of Heaven, the one entrusted by the cosmos to rule all under heaven. You suddenly understand why the Chinese people chose the dragon as their most exalted symbol. It is not a fearsome monster, but the perfect embodiment of nature's might. A representation of power, harmony, and the eternal bond between humanity and the universe. You take a few steps back, feeling the profound union of the dragon's image with the Chinese philosophy of Tianren Heyi, the harmony between heaven and humanity. The dragon stands for the balance of yin and yang, for life-giving rains and bountiful harvests, for the prosperity of the land and its people. In imperial ceremonies and folk festivals alike, the dragon appears as an honoured presence, a living reminder of the duty of rulers to their people and of humankind's responsibility to live in balance with the vast natural world. As you leave the grand hall, the image of the dragon follows you still. Each vermilion door, each pillar carved with coiling dragons, each golden upturned roof tile gleaming beneath the boundless blue sky, together they impress upon you the enduring belief of the Chinese people that the dragon is not merely the ultimate emblem of imperial power, but the immortal soul of their civilization, the eternal bridge between heaven, earth, and humankind. You stand among the ruins of an ancient European castle as twilight falls, painting the sky a deep blood-red hue. Before you rise crumbling stone walls blackened with soot, as if still holding the memories of a fierce battle long past. You kneel and pick up a single dragon scale scattered on the ground, cold as steel, sharp as a blade. In that moment you realise you're standing upon the remnants of a legend, a battlefield that has haunted Europe's imagination for centuries. From the shadows of the shattered keep, you can almost hear the resolute footsteps of the legendary Knight St. George. His piercing gaze cuts through the darkness and his sword gleams like frozen lightning against the night. Opposite him looms a massive dragon, its scales black as the abyss, eyes burning like live embers, claws outstretched in deadly menace. The air is taut as a drawn bowstring, the scorching heat of the dragon's breath, rising like the flames of hell itself. St. George does not fight merely to save a princess or a city, he battles to destroy the very embodiment of chaos in and the endless darkness that dwells within the human soul. You think of another hero, Beowulf, the proud Norse warrior standing tall at the mouth of a frigid cave, where a great dragon slumbers guarding an immeasurable hoard of treasure. That dragon is more than a beast, it is the living symbol of greed, desire, and the darkest impulses of humankind. As Beowulf grips his sword, his aged eyes blazing like fire, he knows that this is not a fight for himself alone. It is a struggle for all humanity, a battle to preserve conscience and virtue in a world fraught with peril and temptation. You lift your eyes to the ancient stone walls. Every crack is a scar, every weathered block a fragment of a tragic story, a story of the ceaseless battle between good and evil. In Europe, dragons were never creatures to be revered. They were stark warnings of corruption and ever-lurking danger within human society itself. They live on in stories, paintings, and these forsaken castles as eternal reminders that evil is always present, always waiting, and must always be overcome through courage and morality. As night fully descends, you quietly step out of the ruins. Behind you, darkness swallows the desolate remains. Yet in your heart the tales of knights and dragons leave behind a lesson powerful and unforgettable. The true battle against dragons is not confined to myth, it rages every day in the hearts of all humankind. You stand at the grand stone steps of the Kukulkan Pyramid in Chichen Itza, bathed in the amber light of dusk. The glow of the setting sun washes over each ancient limestone block, turning the entire pyramid into a radiant monument of gold amid the vast, mysterious lands of the Maya. The air feels still, as if the world itself has paused, waiting for something sacred to unfold. You lift your eyes to the towering structure. The sun's rays shift slowly across the steep stairways, and at the precise moment of the spring equinox you witness the marvel, that the ancient Maya predicted millennia ago, the pyramid's shadow forms the image of a colossal serpent sinuously descending the stone steps. A shiver runs down your spine as awe filled your chest. You're standing before the living presence of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, revered by the ancient peoples of Central and South America as the creator of humankind. Unlike the fierce, terrifying dragons of many legends, Quetzalcoatl, known to the Maya as Kukulkan, is not a monster to be feared. He's the benevolent god of life, the bringer of civilization, knowledge and art to humanity. Around you, faces of the local people reflect deep reverence and gratitude, their eyes bright with hope and faith. To them, Quetzalcoatl is the divine patron of creation, peace, kindness, and humanity's eternal bond with nature. You imagine a time long ago when this god first came alive in the imagination of the Maya and the Aztec, with a body flowing like a mighty river and great feathered wings symbolizing the vast sky and freedom. Quetzalcoatl did not arrive in fire and death, but in the gentle winds of dawn and the songs of morning birds. He gave humankind maize for sustenance, taught them to build cities and magnificent pyramids, and guided their mastery of art, mathematics and astronomy. Today's festival is not merely a ritual to honour a deity, it is an expression of profound gratitude to a divine protector, a reminder that humanity does not exist apart from nature but is forever an inseparable part of it. Every dance, every resonant drumbeat, every prayer sent skyward reflects the philosophy of harmony with the natural world and reverence for life itself, values that Quetzalcoatl bestowed upon his people thousands of years ago. As night falls and you step away from the pyramid, the vision of the feathered serpent god lingers in your mind. Not a terrifying beast, but a noble and benevolent figure, a perfect symbol of creation, peace, and the civilization that flourished across the Americas from their earliest dawn to this very day. You stand in the midst of a vast African swamp where the dying sun casts a molten bronze glow across the shimmering waters. The wetlands stretch endlessly dense with reeds and marked by the tracks of wild animals that come to drink at day's end. The air is heavy with moisture, rich with the scent of mud and earth, as though you are breathing in the living breath of the African land itself. Here in this untamed and mysterious place, people have long believed that every swamp and every great body of water is guarded by a sacred being known as the serpent spirit, a colossal snake of unmatched power. No one doubts its existence, for generation after generation has grown up hearing vivid, unshakable stories of its presence. The local inhabitants live alongside the serpent spirit as naturally as they live with the rising and setting of the sun. They do not see it as a monster, but as a divine guardian protector of life, and of water, the most precious resource in this harsh land. Many years ago, when a brutal drought ravaged the region, the people found their last hope of survival near one single great swamp. There they discovered undeniable signs of a massive creature, deep sinuous grooves etched into the mud, a shed skin stretching tens of metres, and huge trees snapped and crushed in the mysterious darkness of night. From that moment, the people knew their lives were safeguarded by a vast, unseen power. Yet that power was never to be taken for granted. Those who disrespected nature, who hunted, excessively polluted the waters, or harmed the sacred wetlands, soon faced terrifying omens, toppled trees, vanishing animals, and the swamp's waters turning an ominous black as though nature itself had grown wrathful. To the locals, these were warnings from the serpent spirit, the guardian of the invisible boundaries that humanity must never cross. Its presence is as certain to them as the sun's daily journey across the sky, a law as unchanging as the land that has sustained their ancestors for countless generations. The serpent spirit is no vague legend. It lives within every blade of grass, every pool of water, every towering tree rooted in the swamp. It is a constant reminder of humanity's smallness and fragility in the face of nature's vast, inviolable power. As night falls completely, you gaze into the heart of the swamp. The chorus of insects echoes all around, darkness drapes over the water, and yet you feel a profound, mysterious vitality shifting in the breath of the land itself. This is the power of the serpent spirit, the eternal guardian of Africa's wetlands, a presence that reminds humankind to remain forever respectful and humble before the wild, immortal force of nature. A dragon has never been a mere creature of human imagination. It is the clearest reflection of what lies deep within the soul of every people, their fiercest desires, their unspoken fears, and the values humanity has pursued throughout its long journey of existence. In the image of a dragon, we see ourselves both noble and fragile, both powerful and vulnerable. Whether as a symbol of authority or chaos of benevolence or severity, the dragon has always stood as a silent answer to humanity's most profound questions. Who are we? What do we believe in? And where do we draw our limits in this vast, boundless world? Perhaps dragons do not exist to be feared or worshipped, but to remind us of the delicate balance between opposing forces within our own hearts, a timeless truth we continue to seek in legends that never grow old. Have you ever wondered why among countless mythical creatures it is the dragon alone that has endured in humanity's imagination for millennia? It has never stepped off the page, never walked the earth in reality, yet it has never ceased to haunt us more vividly, more persistently than many things that truly exist. We have conquered nature, crossed oceans and ventured into space, and yet strangely we have never let go of the dragon. It remains both the embodiment of our grandest dreams and the symbol of our deepest, most unspoken fears. Perhaps the dragon endures not because it is real, but because it is the most real thing within us, a boundless desire, an unyielding limit, a mystery we can never fully unravel. And if that is true, then you, the one reading these words, are you not carrying an invisible dragon within your own mind? In the end, has the dragon truly never existed? Or is it that humankind has never truly wished to let it go? When we speak of dragons in literature, we are not merely recounting tales or describing fantastical beasts. Rather, we embark on a journey into the human imagination, into a world that transcends reality, where people confront the most formidable challenges within themselves. The dragon becomes a vital test, a lens through which authors across the ages have examined human nature, revealing truths that ordinary life rarely lays bare. For Tolkien's Smaug in The Hobbit is far more than a simple antagonist lurking within the lonely mountain. Smaug is an intelligent, cunning and articulate a creature whose very words can unnerve even the bravest of adventurers. He embodies greed and the corrupting allure of power, but on a deeper level, Smaug raises a profound moral question. Does a dragon like this exist within each of us, a part of ourselves that craves to possess, to dominate, to hoard all that is good and beautiful for our own through Smaug? Tolkien challenges every reader to confront the dragon hidden within their own heart. J.K. Rowling, by contrast, reshapes the dragon archetype into beings that are both fearsome and vulnerable. The chained dragon beneath Gringotts in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows enslaved and exploited to serve human greed becomes a stark symbol of the unnatural boundaries people impose on nature, on freedom, and even on themselves. The moment the dragon breaks its chains and soars into the sky is not merely an epic escape. It is a powerful declaration of liberation from the suffocating constraints we so often build around our own minds. Rowling's dragon is a reminder that freeing the beast is in truth freeing ourselves. Ursula K. Le Guin takes yet another path. In the world of Earthsea, dragons are not metaphors for power or freedom, nor foes to be vanquished. They are a distinct and equal race beings of immense wisdom and knowledge. Encounters between humans and dragons in her stories are never contests of strength but profound dialogues, explorations of understanding between two different kinds of intelligence. Le Guin's dragons embody ultimate knowledge and balance, pointing to a higher state of existence, where true power lies in wisdom, compassion, and the ability to bridge divides. Through the eyes of these great writers, we see that literature has never used dragons as mere entertainment. Each work transforms the dragon into a symbol of great depth, a gateway for readers to look inward, confront their own limits, and explore the boundless landscapes of the human spirit. These dragons endure because they are the deepest echoes of our collective imagination, silent answers to questions that reality itself can never fully resolve. If dragons in literature are symbols for readers to contemplate, then in the world of video games they become something entirely different, an experience so vivid and tangible that players are no longer merely imagining but are forced to confront their deepest fears and desires head-on. Dragons are no longer confined to stories told by others. Now you are the one writing the adventure, directly testing your own limits against an ancient, overwhelming power. You stand beneath Skyrim's ashen skies, the bitter cold cutting through your thin armour. From the distance, a roar echoes like thunder. From the depths of time, Alduin, the World Eater, descends with vast wings that cast a shadow over the land. In Skyrim, the dragon is the ultimate, seemingly unstoppable force, but also the most personal trial for every player. Can you overcome this ancient power? Are you brave enough to fulfill the destiny of the Dragonborn, to rise and defeat the dragon that threatens all existence? Each battle with a dragon is not just a test of strength. It is the clearest trial of courage and the spirit of adventure within every player. Step into the world of Elden Ring and dragons, take on an even more mysterious and fearsome role. You wander the desolate, haunting expanse of the lands, between your heart pounding as the monstrous ancient forms of dragons emerge from the earth itself. In Elden Ring, every encounter with a dragon is a confrontation with despair, solitude, and the awe-inspiring vastness of nature's power. Each fight is more than a test of skill. It becomes a deeply psychological journey, forcing you to reckon with yourself and push beyond limits you never believed you could surpass. In the world of Warcraft, dragons hold yet another meaning. Here they are not merely terrifying foes, but once divine guardians of Azeroth. You witness Neltharion Deathwing, the former Earthwarder's protector turned catastrophic nightmare, threatening the very existence of the world he once vowed to protect. This transformation raises a profound question. When power becomes absolute, how fragile is the boundary between good and evil in Warcraft? Every confrontation with a dragon becomes a moral battle as much as a physical one, a reflection on the burdens of power, corruption and responsibility. Through these games, dragons step beyond the pages of books and the still frames of films. They feel real. You can almost sense their scorching breath, the thunderous beat of their wings, the earth-shaking power of their roars reverberating through your chest. But beyond the spectacle of sound and sight, dragons in games serve as profound reminders, whether in virtual worlds or reality. We all need a challenge great enough to reveal the true extent of our strength and resolve. These dragons endure in players' memories not merely because they're terrifying, but because each encounter teaches the same timeless lesson, that every time we face a dragon we are in truth battling ourselves. As the theatre lights fade to black and darkness settles over the room, you sit in breathless anticipation waiting for something extraordinary to appear. Then, suddenly a thunderous beat of wings tears through the speakers, a sound so powerful it feels as if it rips straight out of the screen. Two golden eyes blaze to life, vast wings fill the frame, and molten breath erupts like flowing lava before you stands Drogon, the legendary black dragon of Game of Thrones. On the screen, dragons are no longer sketches on paper or mere products of imagination. They're alive, ferocious, majestic, and deeply emotive, convincing you, if only for a fleeting moment, that such mythical creatures truly exist. Drogon and his brothers Rhaegal and Viserion are not just giant beasts that fly and breathe fire. They are the living embodiment of ultimate power of humanity's conflicting hunger for freedom and dominion. When Daenerys rides Drogon conquering cities and incinerating her enemies with dragonfire, the creature becomes a vivid metaphor for power itself, seductive, awe-inspiring, and perilous when left unchecked. Yet, if Drogon leaves you awestruck and trembling toothless from How to Train, your dragon stirs something entirely different within you. You recall that first moment when Hiccup reaches out to touch the dragon, not with sword or arrow, but with trust, compassion and understanding. Toothless does not roar or burn the world with flames. Instead, he blinks softly, tilts his head in curiosity, and feels unmistakably alive, a creature with true emotion and soul. On the big screen, you witness an unlikely heartfelt friendship between human and dragon, one that shatters centuries-old prejudices and assumptions. The film becomes more than just a moving story. It delivers a profound message. True strength is not found in dominating others, but in the courage to understand and accept what is different. These dragons, whether terrifying or endearing, linger in the minds of audiences not merely because of dazzling visual effects, but because they embody the deepest truths humanity longs for. Drogon stands as a symbol of absolute power, and the danger it carries, while Toothless becomes the clearest image of friendship, empathy, and the compassion we all yearn for. They have stepped out of ancient myth and breathed new life into our imagination, making the impossible feel more real than ever before. Dragons on screen remind you not only of the power of storytelling, but also of a simple truth: legends never die. Each time the lights go dark and the screen begins to glow, you are the one continuing the tale, writing once again the story of dragons and of yourself. Have you ever wondered why among countless mythical creatures humanity has imagined the dragon alone has never disappeared? Why is it that a creature that never truly existed endures so vivid, so powerful, so real, far longer than many beings that actually walk this earth? Perhaps it is because the dragon is not merely a product of imagination. It is a symbol, a mirror reflecting the deepest corners of the human soul, those things we both long for and fear. From absolute power to unbridled freedom, from mysterious wisdom to the secrets we ache to uncover, the dragon touches the ultimate boundaries of human desire and fear. For this reason, dragons cannot die, not as long as we continue to ask ourselves profound questions about existence, about the value of power, and about the limits we have yet to surpass. Dragons are humanity's eternal question about power. Does absolute strength protect, or does it inevitably destroy Drogon in Game of Thrones? Tolkien's Smaug both remind us that power is at once alluring and terrifying, something we crave yet instinctively fear. And so the dragon becomes the perfect enduring symbol, forever allowing us to look inward at our own hearts. The dragon also whispers of our deepest fears, fear of the unknown, fear of that which lies far beyond our understanding. Yet from this fear springs humanity's greatest drive, to explore, to conquer, to push into the uncharted. When you see a dragon on screen in a book or in a game, you do not merely see terror. You see a silent challenge urging you to surpass yourself. Each dragon is a lesson, a trial, a doorway leading to places no one has yet set foot. But more than anything, dragons endure in our imagination. For a simpler reason, they are the greatest mirrors of who we are. In them we see ferocity and might, but also loneliness, vulnerability, and a yearning to be understood. Across every era, humanity has always seen a part of itself in the shape of the dragon. These mythical creatures represent the endless human journey to seek, to struggle, to strive for something higher and greater than oneself. And so even as you close your reflections, the question still echoes: do dragons never vanish because humanity has never ceased to aspire, never stopped reaching for something beyond itself? Perhaps dragons truly exist not because they are real, but because they embody everything most real within each of us. You and I have journeyed through countless lands across thousands of years of history, witnessing every form a dragon has taken in humanity's imagination. Yet after everything, do you truly know where dragons come from? We have unearthed ancient fossils, seen dragons in the primal fears of our ancestors, and heard their roars woven into the tempest of myth. But is that enough to explain why dragons still live so vividly in our minds today? Dragons are not real, yet they have never truly died. Perhaps they endure because humanity has always needed a mirror, something to reflect the deepest corners of the soul. So where do dragons truly come from? Or rather, is the real question this: do dragons come from the world outside or from within each of us? The answer has never been clear. But one thing is certain: for as long as you keep asking the question, the dragon will live on forever inside your mind. You pause in the middle of your long journey, gazing down at the fragments you've gathered. Pieces from every culture, from distant lands and forgotten times. Each shard gleams like a gemstone, yet none ever fits perfectly with the others. And you wonder, why after thousands of years of history have we always searched for a single origin of the dragon, yet never found a clear answer? At first you thought dragons were simply memories preserved from the strange fossil discoveries of ancient peoples. Enormous dinosaur bones, razor-sharp teeth from extinct beasts. These seemed like natural sparks for the image of a monstrous creature in the minds of our ancestors. But then you realise fossils alone cannot explain the dragon's enduring fire in the heart of human culture. So you turn to mythology and morality, where dragons became eternal symbols of the struggle between good and evil, chaos and order. Tiamat defeated by Marduk Typhon, struck down by Zeus. Vritra shattered by Indra's thunderbolt. These were not merely myths, but reflections of a war waged within every human soul. Yet even that doesn't fully explain why the Inuit who live in lands untouched by snakes or fossils still told stories of dragon-like beings. Looking deeper, evolutionary psychology offers another answer. Dragons may be born of our most primal fears hardwired into the human brain over millions of years. The theory makes sense, but still you hesitate because dragons are not just symbols of fear. If they were, why would the East revere them as bringers of rain, wisdom and imperial power? Why would the Aztecs worship them as creators of civilization? Why would African tribes see them as sacred guardians of life? And finally you ask yourself, what if every culture created its own dragon? Not because dragons share a single origin, but because each society needs a symbol vast enough, powerful enough to reflect who they truly are. That is when the realization sets in. Every time we seek one origin for dragons, we overlook the most important truth that dragons are the clearest mirrors through which humanity sees itself. And so you understand the dragon has no single source. It was born from fossil and fable, from moral conflict and evolutionary instinct, from wild nature and cherished ideals. The dragon is not defined by one origin, but by its ability to gather all origins into one. Not to give us a final answer, but to ensure we never stop asking the biggest question of all. Who are we really? You sit in stillness wondering how a creature that has never truly existed could possess a life more powerful and enduring than many species that once roamed the earth. Dragons appear everywhere, in books, in films, in games, in stories passed down from generation to generation. Their existence does not depend on reality, but on something far more mysterious and profound, the limitless imagination of humankind. Since the dawn of storytelling, dragons have stood as humanity's greatest trial, its most difficult question and unending journey in our quest to understand ourselves. Dragons embody power that we both crave and fear. Through them, we are reminded that the greater the power, the heavier the burden of responsibility, and the closer we come to ruin if we cannot master our own greed. But dragons are more than symbols of strength and might. They're also the perfect image of freedom, a freedom humanity longs for, yet so often lacks the courage to claim. When a dragon beats its vast wings and soars into the open sky, it becomes the truest expression of our dream to break every chain, to transcend every limit. In the flight of the dragon, we see our own desire to shatter boundaries and chase horizons unknown. Across cultures, dragons have always held a central place in expressing identity and belief. They reflect the faith, philosophy, morality, and deepest values of every society. In the East, the dragon is harmony between nature and humankind. In the West, it is the darkness to be overcome in order to reach the light. In the Americas, dragons like Quetzalcoatl are creators of humanity and civilization. In Africa, they're sacred guardians of the wild, commanding reverence and respect. Through each of these visions, the dragon becomes a vessel through which we come to know ourselves more clearly than ever before. Ultimately, perhaps the greatest reason dragons endure is because they never give us a final answer, only questions. And it is those very questions that grant dragons their immortality. They compel us to reflect, to examine ourselves, and to wonder about the world around us. For as long as we seek to explore, to conquer new frontiers, and to face the deepest truths within our own hearts, dragons will never fade away. They will not dwell in caves, in skies, or beneath oceans, but forever within the boundless, eternal imagination of us all. You gaze toward the distant horizon where the sun slowly sinks, leaving behind a sky ablaze in crimson like the final breath of a legendary dragon. In that fleeting moment you wonder, could a creature truly be immortal, living on through time despite never having existed in flesh and bone? You realize the answer is not out there, not buried in ancient fossils, but deep within the boundless imagination of humankind. Dragons have never truly vanished because we have never allowed them to. Humanity has always needed dragons, not merely to explain nature's mysteries, but to better understand its own nature. Whenever we stand before a dragon, whether in a story, a game on screen, or in a dream, we see something greater. Deeper, a boundary yet to be crossed. A power yet to be mastered, or a desire that has never been spoken aloud. Every time humanity tells a story about dragons, it is trying perhaps unconsciously to understand itself. Dragons are the ultimate symbols of power, but also the greatest reminders of responsibility and humility before the natural world. They embody our darkest fears, yet they just as powerfully represent our loftiest aspirations, absolute freedom, ultimate wisdom, and perfect harmony between humanity and the world around it. You come to understand that dragons are immortal not because of strength or magic, but because of the infinite power of storytelling. For as long as we can tell stories, as long as we continue to ask profound questions about who we are, dragons will endure as the most vivid mirrors reflecting all of these truths back at us. And perhaps the most important reason dragons never die is that they have never given us a final answer. They exist as an eternal unanswered question, one that compels us to keep exploring, to keep reflecting, and to keep dreaming. It is precisely this mystery, this lack of resolution, that makes dragons endlessly captivating and inseparable part of humanity's inner life. As you stand there in the stillness of twilight, you realize a simple yet profound truth: dragons have never died, because they are the eternal story humanity keeps telling itself. They are the clearest mirror in which we ask, who am I, what do I desire, and how far will I go on this endless journey? The final answer is not out there. It lies within you in every dream, every story, every page you turn. You are the one who keeps dragons alive, and you are the one who will continue telling their story, a story that has never ended and never will. Hello and welcome to Soothing Pod Sleep Stories. My name is Arif, and tonight I will be your guide as we embark on a magical journey to a land far, far away where your favourite childhood fairy tales take on a whole new perspective. Together, we will glide beneath the mighty wings of dragons, sit beside a crackling fireplace, and discover whether love's true kiss really can heal all. But before we begin, let's take a moment to relax, to find peace and comfort in the place where we are here and now. Close your eyes. Feel your body sink into the surface beneath you. Right here in this very moment, you have no obligations, no responsibilities. Simply by listening to the sound of my voice, you're already giving your body the precious gift of rest. Everything else you're seeking will come in time well, unless you're looking for millions of dollars or your very own private island. That I cannot promise, though I wish I could. But isn't a good story almost the same thing almost? So let us begin using our imaginations together. What does your private island look like? Do you see golden beaches where turquoise waters gently lap against the shore? Maybe on this island there is no cell service, no emails, no connection to the outside world, only the soothing sound of waves brushing softly against the sand. The rhythm of the ocean begins to match the rhythm of your own breathing. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And of course there's an unlimited tiki bar with endless food and snacks. At least that's how it is on my island. With your eyes still closed, turn your attention back to your breathing steady and calm. Breathing may seem so simple, but focusing on it can gently carry you closer and closer to dreamland. Whatever dreamland means to you. As you breathe in, imagine the warm sunshine of your private island shining down on your skin. Feel the toasty rays on your arms, your legs, your torso, and your face wrapping you in comfort. And as you exhale, a gentle ocean breeze sweeps across your body, whisking the heat away and leaving behind a perfect sense of ease. You breathe in once more, feeling the sunlight on your arms, your legs, your chest, your face, even all the way down to the tips of your fingers. Then slowly the wind carries it all away, bringing with it the dreamy aroma of the ocean of distant tropical shores of peace. One more deep breath in, feeling that golden warmth, and breathing out, letting it all go. Slowly the breeze meanders its way toward you, whisking away the warmth and leaving you in a perfect state of comfort and peace. Now that we've taken a moment to relax, to truly find calm in the here, and now it's time to journey to a land far, far, far away. A place of magic, beauty and lessons waiting to be discovered. But be warned, this is no ordinary fairy tale. No, this might just be the most boring fairy tale ever told. After all, how exciting could a princess, a dragon, a prince and a talking moon really be, especially when the moon itself is known for being, well, a bit of a bore? Close your eyes, sink deeper into the soft surface beneath you. Let your imagination carry you as we travel to a land far, far away. just outside the capital city of Protagonisburg, not to be mistaken for Antagonisburg, which lies across the bridge of bitterness over the caverns of conflict through the woods of whiny dialogue and beneath the brambles of bland backstories. No, our story does not begin in Antagonisburg, nor even in Protagonisburg itself, which is a tad too self-righteous and carries the faint scent of a smug underdog victory. Instead, our story begins on the outskirts of Protagonisburg, where picturesque meadows stretch as far as the eye can see. Here bunnies hop gracefully through the fields, pausing now and then to cast passers-by the most darling looks with their unnaturally sparkling eyes. No one quite knows why their eyes glimmer so, but it seems that every bunny in this land has been blessed or afflicted with this curious trait. Sometimes these sparkly-eyed bunnies stop to nibble on daisies flowers that, for reasons unknown, are always in full bloom before bounding lightly through the wooden rungs of a nearby fence. Perhaps there is a kindly shepherd living just beyond that fence, perhaps even a beanock, or if rumours are true, a truly gigantic one. But our story does not linger in this meadow of sparkling-eyed rabbits. No, we journey farther still beyond the grassy fields and past the forest where deer roam with the same dazzling eyes, though the forest creatures possess an additional quirk that many find just a bit strange. They have a peculiar habit singing cheerfully as they go about their tasks. These helpful creatures often make clothes for passers-by, whether the passers-by want them or not, and they even take it upon themselves to comb travellers' hair as they gallantly ride through the forest on their noble steeds. When these brave knights happen to be wearing full armour, it becomes quite the challenge. But the birds are far more resilient than one might expect. After all, one must have perfectly coiffed hair before meeting their beloved or charging into a climactic battle. Beyond this whimsical forest, just before the swamp, there stands a small crooked hut on the edge of the mud. Dried garlands of herbs and plants dangle from the rafters, swaying gently in the wind. Cats slink around the property, hissing at anyone foolish enough to pass by. Inside, a witch peers out from cracked window panes, taking deliberate bites from an apple that curiously never seems to grow smaller. Dressed in tattered rags, proof that she has clearly never passed through the birds' fashionable forest, she glares at knights who dare approach. Whenever they pass, she calls out in her raspy voice, warning them of the grim fate that awaits. "Leave the princess be," she cries. "Do not try to save her." But of course the knights never listen. After all, why would anyone heed the words of an eternal lady at the edge of a swamp, a witch in a pointy hat with an all-knowing crystal ball and a collection of encyclopedias thick enough to fill an entire library? It is far beyond the meadow of sparkling-eyed bunnies, through the forest of glow-up birds, and past the witch's ominous cabin that we finally come upon the woman at the heart of our story. Naturally, she's not living in a cosy little cottage by the water, singing about books with her eccentric inventor father. She's not paddling down a river, belting out songs about the colours of the wind, nor is she looking after her brothers who have been cursed into bears. No, she's trapped in a tower. That's right. This is that kind of story. She is a damsel, and by every traditional fairy tale measure, she is a damsel in grave distress. The tower stands as a lonely pillar in the sky, so tall that no one could even dream of climbing it. Even if some daring knight could scale its impossible heights, they would first have to survive the dragon guarding its base, its massive tail coiled protectively around the tower ivy, draping over its ancient emerald green scales. The dragon's menacing red eyes are enough to make even the bravest warriors long for the peaceful meadows of sparkling-eyed bunnies, where they could sigh in comfort rather than face certain doom. Yet neither the tower nor the dragon stopped the knights. Day after day they tried. High above Princess Blossom, the maiden locked in the tower spent her days watching their futile efforts. She saw knights snapped at by the dragon tumble face first into muddy puddles, or fail to get past the persistent birds that insisted on decorating their hair with pretty satin bows. Some knights, having never touched anything but cold steel, were utterly terrified by the sight of delicate ribbons. So why did they try so tirelessly? Had Princess Blossom begged for their rescue? Had she promised her hand in marriage? Had her royal parents offered an enormous sum of gold? It is a pity to spoil the truth so soon, but none of these reasons were correct. The knights sought Princess Blossom simply because they had heard she was the fairest in all the land. Her proud parents, the king and queen, boasted endlessly about her beauty, intelligence, and general princess-like perfection. They lamented that the tower and dragon kept her locked away from the world, and often wished that some hero might free her. So the knights came. They tried for weeks, which became months, and eventually more and more joined the quest, each one determined to be the one to succeed. Then came the fateful week. 4 knights gathered around a fire at the edge of the meadow of sparkling-eyed bunnies. That night they made a pact. One of them would be the hero who rescued Princess Blossom from her lonely tower. The first was Knight Benifer Braga Boast. Handsome by every account, he spent his youth charming noblewomen into fainting with a single wink, shooting apples off people's heads, and drinking pints at the local tavern. Flexing his muscles was a dangerous pastime. His biceps alone could nearly cause an earthquake. For this reason, he had to be very careful, as all real knights must be. Benifer Braga Boast had countless admirers vying for his affection, yet he could never choose just one. Now, however he had made up his mind, he must have the best of the best. And for him that meant only one thing: becoming engaged to Princess Blossom. Blossom, oh Benifer Braga. Boast already knew so much about her. He dreamed of her nearly every night. She was beautiful. She was a princess, honestly. What more could a knight possibly want? To him, she was perfect. Benifer wasn't about to let any of the other knights reach Princess Blossom's tower before him. He couldn't risk anyone else stealing his beloved's heart, especially when he was certain he was the only one truly worthy of her love. Ever the generous man, he stepped forward, sword gleaming in hand, and boldly declared that he would set out first, saving the others the trouble. Before anyone could protest, he mounted his horse and galloped away, racing through the lush meadow toward his destiny. The wind whipped across his face, filling him with a sense of adventure and belonging. Wildflowers brushed against his handmade leather boots, releasing a sweet aroma that would have filled anyone else with joy, but for Benifer it was just a bit too floral for his taste. Still riding confidently through fields toward the setting sun was exactly what knights like him excelled at, and Benifer Braga Boast was convinced, absolutely certain, that he was the best at it. Of course, he was also the best at shooting arrows, winning over noble women, and slaying dragons, or so he frequently reminded anyone who would listen. Perhaps it was some strange family curse of the Braga Boasts. They simply couldn't stop talking about how good they were at everything. He rode effortlessly through the meadow of sparkling-eyed bunnies. They gazed up at him mesmerised, but Benifer had only one defence against their cuteness: his dazzling smile. Flashing his blindingly white teeth, he sent the poor bunnies tumbling back in awe, shielding their eyes from the radiant glow. How did he have such immaculate teeth in a time before dentist floss or even toothpaste? No one knew. But if you asked him, he'd be the first to tell you he had the finest teeth in all the land. Naturally, he would then assure you that he had an obligation to be completely honest about such things. But soon Benifer reached his second challenge, the forest of stylish birds. He could hear their breathtaking songs long before reaching the tree line, where willows, birches, oaks and maples swayed gently in the breeze. Sunlight danced through the leaves, scattering shifting patterns of gold across the forest floor. If you listened closely, you might even hear the soft pitter-patter of the birds' feet as they fluttered from branch to branch, gathering eagerly to watch the knight's bold approach. Benifer's brow glistened with sweat. His massive muscles tensed and ready for action, every fibre of his being focused on meeting the one he believed to be his true love. He paid no mind to the dappled shadows beneath him, or the sweet melodic calls of the birds above. In his mind he was already imagining the praises his future wife, Princess Blossom, would soon shower upon him. As he pressed deeper into the forest, the birds began to descend gracefully from the branches, their lilting voices carrying sweet words that tumbled through the air like petals on a breeze. The birds, their beaks glinting in the fading sunlight, sang sweetly of love, beauty and connection. Their voices were so enchanting that even a statue might shed a tear. But Benifer, whose personality rivaled that of a statue, remained as dry-eyed as ever. The radiant birds surrounded him, carrying the finest cloths the land of far, far away had ever seen. Each piece shimmered in the golden glow of the setting sun, as though every thread was spun from pure silver or gold. Benifer, of course, knew he was a late autumn, so the idea of wearing silver was to him completely unacceptable. "For you, brave knight," a small chick chirped as it swooped gracefully toward him, a magnificent cape clutched in its beak. It fluttered closer, ready to drape the regal garment over Benifer's broad shoulders. But Benifer merely scoffed, brushing the cape aside with a wave of his hand. "I have no need for your cape, bird. I've already chosen the perfect armour for meeting my beloved. Just look at these muscles," he flexed grandly, showing off, as he glided through the forest atop his proud steed. The birds exchanged looks, clearly unimpressed. One cardinal fluffed its brilliant red wings and tried again. "We insist you try it, noble knight. We made this cape just for you, for your quest." But Benifer only sneered. "I need no help on my quest, foul creatures. Surely you've heard of me? Benifer Bragger? Boast?" The birds, in fact, had not heard of him. Unfortunately for them, they could no longer say the same. "For you, brave knight," croaked a raven as it descended gracefully, holding the cape out one final time. This time, Benifer's patience snapped. He swatted angrily at the raven, but as fate would have it, the delicate fabric brushed across his rough skin. The stunning red cloth floated upward in the forest breeze, and before he could react, draped itself right across his eyes. Blinded by the shimmering fabric, Benifer never saw the giant sinkhole lying just ahead. Fortunately for his loyal steed, the horse spotted the danger just in time. With a powerful buck, it launched Benifer high into the air, sending him tumbling straight into the sinkhole. Far above, Princess Blossom happened to glance out her tower window, just in time to see Benifer Bragger Boast soaring helplessly through the air before vanishing from sight. From the comfort of her bubble-filled bath, she simply sipped her homemade lemonade and turned another page of her book, humming a soft tune to herself. Another night stopped by the birds. With a quiet sigh, she sank deeper into the lilac-scented water, letting the soothing warmth ease her tired muscles. After all, she'd spent the entire morning playing her harp and staring out over the vast lands below. A massage would have been ideal, but for now her luxurious bath would have to suffice. Meanwhile, back at the edge of the meadow, the three remaining knights exchanged uneasy glances as they sat around the fire. They waited, hoping Benifer would return triumphant. But when his horse trotted back riderless, they all knew exactly what had happened. Benifer Bragger Boast had failed to reach the beautiful princess. Next, Montgomery Sharp Chin decided it was his turn to attempt the daring rescue of Princess Blossom. He ran a hand lovingly down the silky flank of his horse, whispering a promise of endless hay as a reward for the journey ahead. With remarkable ease, Montgomery passed through the meadow of sparkling-eyed bunnies and the forest of fashionable birds and deer. When the raven swooped down to place a cape on his shoulders, he accepted it with a smug smile, flexing his muscles as he rode. This, he proclaimed to the birds and deer, is how a real man behaves when saving his beloved. Far above, that very beloved Princess Blossom sat in her tower sipping afternoon tea as she watched the sun drift lazily across the sky. Streaks of orange, pink and purple painted the clouds like a watercolour masterpiece. As Montgomery approached the witch's crooked little cabin, he rolled his eyes. What possible threat could a feeble old woman pose to the manliest man in all the land? The witch shuffled out onto her porch holding a bowl of bubbling fragrant stew. Just as he rode by, she offered it to him with a gnarled hand. "This will give you the power you need for your journey ahead," she croaked. Montgomery sniffed disdainfully at the pungent brew. "I have all the power I need, look at me," he bellowed, flexing his muscles dramatically. The witch barely blinked, her slate-grey hair whipping across her unimpressed face. Without a word, she lifted the stew once more. Montgomery, thoroughly offended by her persistence, swatted the bowl away and continued riding. The witch shook her head and clicked her tongue. "The boy doesn't have enough power to scare them off," she muttered to herself. And sure enough, as Montgomery and his steed entered the swamp, the final obstacle before the dragon, a hungry alligator surged up from the murky water. With a single gulp, the beast swallowed Montgomery whole. It preferred humans with a milder flavour, and Montgomery sadly was seasoned just right. Back at the edge of the meadow, the next knight prepared for his journey. Finnegan Fierceheart, bravest, strongest and fiercest of all. The knights in the land mounted his steed with unwavering determination. He rode boldly through the meadow and the forest of fashionable birds, undeterred by their fluttering attempts to adorn him. When he reached the witch's hut, he didn't turn away from her offering. Instead, he took a deep, hearty sip of the bubbling stew she held out. The pungent taste of garlic and onions was so overwhelming that it brought tears to his eyes. As Finnegan pressed onward into the swamp, the hungry alligator rose once more, jaws wide ready to feast. But the moment the creature caught a whiff of Finnegan's potent garlic-laden breath, its eyes began to water violently. With a disgusted groan, the alligator sank back beneath the surface, utterly repelled by the knight's newly acquired stench. Finally, at last, someone had made it to the base of the tower. Before him, the dragon slumbered peacefully, a colossal beast whose scales shimmered like emeralds in the fading light of the setting sun. Tiny plumes of smoke puffed rhythmically from its nostrils with every slow, rumbling exhale. Finnegan smiled to himself, gripping his sword tightly. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. A soft, rumbling snore escaped the dragon's lips. This was Finnegan's chance, the perfect moment to slay the beast. With a dramatic shing, he drew his sword and charged forward, heart pounding, ready for glory. But the dragon merely cracked open one eye. With a single swipe of her massive claw, she ended Finnegan's attack before it had even begun. High in her tower, Princess Blossom looked up from the art project she was working on. At the sight of yet another knight lying defeated on the ground below, she clicked her tongue and sighed. When will these strange men ever learn? None. Back at the meadow, a final knight sat by the crackling fire. His amber eyes glimmered in the light as he quietly prepared for his journey. His name was Noble, Kind Man. To many, he was a mystery. No one truly knew what kind of man he was. After carefully extinguishing the fire, Noble mounted his horse, humming a soft tune under his breath, as he set off toward the tower. When he passed the sparkling-eyed bunnies, he tossed them small carrots. The delighted bunnies swarmed the treats, their glittering eyes shining even brighter than before. Through the forest, Noble graciously thanked the birds as they adorned him with a handmade nest-woven cape and gently placed a flower crown atop his ginger locks. He waved goodbye to them with genuine warmth before continuing on his way. Upon reaching the witch's crooked cabin, Noble stopped to ask her how she was doing. The witch, stunned by the rare display of kindness, told him about her day. Noble even helped repair the creaky step at the base of her porch. As thanks, the witch offered him a bowl of stew. Though Noble secretly despised onions, he accepted it with a smile and drank it without complaint. He passed through the swamp with ease, waving cheerfully to the alligator as it emerged from the water, its nose wrinkling in disgust. Good luck finding something tastier to eat. Noble called his voice full of sincere goodwill. At last Noble arrived at the base of the towering castle. The massive dragon, emerald scales, glinting eyes narrowed, coiled protectively around the tower, glaring down at him. "I apologize for disturbing you, kind dragon," Noble said, bowing deeply. "I've come to speak with Princess Blossom. Would that be all right?" The dragon blinked, then smiled warmly. "Oh, you'll have to ask her yourself. I'm just her downstairs neighbour." "You wouldn't believe how many people try to break in here," the dragon replied casually. With that, the fearsome beast who had terrified so many stood stretched lazily and wandered off into the forest. Noble remained at the tower's base, gazing upward in quiet awe. Removing his soft wool hat, he held it gently to his chest and called out into the cool open air. "Princess Blossom, I'm sorry to trouble you, but would you like to join me for a walk in the forest this afternoon? My name is Noble." Kind Man heard his own words echo back to him, soft, sing-songy and warmly inviting. Moments later, Princess Blossom popped her head out from the top of the tower. Her long black hair spilled gracefully from the window, glinting in the sunlight. But instead of letting it hang, she coiled it neatly lock by lock, a playful smile brightening her face. "I would love to join you, Noble," she chimed. "I'll be down in just a moment." And true to her word, she was. Princess Blossom descended a hidden staircase inside the tower, slipping quietly out of a back door. For the first time in what felt like decades, she stepped into the sunlight, stretching slightly as the warmth kissed her skin. Noble greeted her with a kind smile, taking her hand gently, before motioning toward the forest, inviting her to lead the way. "How polite of you," Blossom remarked with a soft laugh. "You wouldn't believe how many people try to bother me when I'm just trying to enjoy some peace and quiet. It's why I moved out here in the first place." For the rest of the day, Noble and Princess Blossom sat together at the edge of a tranquil river talking for hours. Noble learned about her favourite colour, her hobbies, and her love for art. Blossom in turn discovered his hopes, his dreams, and the gentle heart behind his quiet nature. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the water in hues of gold and violet, they agreed to meet again the next day. Same time, same place. I hope you've enjoyed this sleep story, and that it has brought you a night of peaceful, restful sleep. And if by chance it has bored you too much, well, perhaps next time I'll try to make things just a little more exciting. If you'd like to hear more tales, feel free to explore our collection of bedtime stories, each designed to lull you into dreams. Until then, sweet dreams. And may you always find your own impossibly tall tower along with the night princess or quiet hero in your life, who knows just when to take you out for a simple, perfect adventure. Today we're going to explore when, where and why the dragon myth began. Dragons appear in countless legends across the world, but they take on many different shapes and roles. So we'll also look at what the very first dragons might have looked like in what scholars call their proto-narrative. Along the way, I'll share some ancient dragon myths that help tie this entire journey together. I'm John White, a specialist in Indo-European mythology, and if this sounds like your kind of story, then grab a cup of tea and welcome to Creckenford. Dragons appear in myths and legends from every corner of the globe, yet their purposes and attributes vary wildly. Some kidnap princesses, others cause devastating floods. Some are huge red and terrifying, while others are small, green and harmless. Just look at St. George, he looks like he's slaying nothing more than a green pig with wings. Dragons fly, slither breathe. Fire dwell underground, soar through the skies, or live deep beneath the sea. But with so many different forms and roles, we must ask, can we truly define what a dragon is? Your mental image of a dragon likely pulls from a mix of myths around the world, from the Indo-European Ngui to Mexico's Quetzalcoatl to Australia's rainbow serpent to South Africa's rain snake. The sheer global spread of these myths suggests that the dragon motif is extremely ancient, predating written history. So as we search for the earliest dragon myths, we must also ask, did this widespread belief leave behind any archaeological traces? And how did such a powerful and consistent motif appear independently in so many cultures across the world? To answer these questions and explain how we reached our conclusions, let me first outline how this research was carried out. This video draws heavily on the work of Julien Duhuy, particularly his paper Le motif du dragon Serite paléolithique mythologie et archéologie. His research combines mythology, archaeology and statistical analysis, and references many important studies which I've included in the description below. But before we dive deeper into the research, let me share a Chinese dragon myth that reveals the universal themes and similarities found in dragon stories around the world. Long ago, when the earth had no rivers or lakes, there was only the Great Sea to the east, home to 4 dragons: the Long Dragon, the Yellow Dragon, the Black Dragon, and the Pearl Dragon. One day, as the dragons soared through the clouds, they looked down and saw people praying for rain, their crops withering and their children starving. Knowing that only the Jade Emperor had the power to make it rain, the dragons flew to his heavenly palace to plead for help. But the Jade Emperor, irritated by their sudden arrival, scolded them for barging in. The Long Dragon spoke humbly, explaining the people's suffering and begging the Emperor to bring rain. The Emperor promised, "Tomorrow I will make it rain." The dragons left with hope, but 10 days passed and no rain fell. Desperate, the people resorted to eating tree bark and clay to stave off hunger. Seeing this, the dragons realised the Jade Emperor did not care. So the dragons formed a plan. They scooped up water from the eastern sea in their mouths and sprayed it across the dry land like rain. Soon crops grew again and the people rejoiced. But when the Jade Emperor learned what they had done, he flew into a rage. He ordered the mountain god to imprison each dragon beneath a massive mountain as punishment. The mountain god obeyed trapping the dragons under 4 great mountains, yet the dragons never regretted their actions. Still holding water in their mouths, they slowly released it, creating China's 4 great rivers: Heilongjiang in the far north, Huanghe Yellow River in central China, Yangtze in the south, Zhujiang Pearl River in the far south. This myth is a powerful story of sacrifice and benevolence, dragons as bringers of water and life, a theme we'll see mirrored in myths from across the world. Here we have a Chinese story where dragons fly through the clouds, bring water to a parched world, and ensure people have food, ultimately becoming associated with the great rivers of the region. We'll return to the relevance of this myth shortly, but first we need to understand how the research itself was conducted. Researching dragons is inherently difficult, not only because dragons don't actually exist, but also because there is a surprising lack of comprehensive studies on how dragon myths are distributed across cultures. To overcome this, researchers analysed dragon myths from 23 different regions around the world. From these sources, they posed 69 questions for each myth, focusing on aspects such as the dragon's physical attributes, its abilities and behaviours, its associations with folklore and cultural motifs. But how does analysing myths in this way actually help? We know that myths generally evolve very slowly within a culture, unless that culture undergoes a major upheaval such as invasion or cultural replacement. In such cases, the dominant culture's myths may overwrite the existing ones. This understanding that myths tend to retain their core elements for thousands of years allows us to recognise similar complex narratives, even when they have diverged over vast distances in time. In previous videos, I've explored similar patterns of myth evolution, showing how a single creation myth motif, humans emerging from the underworld, can evolve into variations like the Earth Diver myth, and then the Bird Scout story. The same pattern is seen in other ancient motifs such as flood myths, cosmic hunt stories, and ferryman of the dead legends. Because myths change gradually, this transformation can be compared to genetic evolution. Just as species diverge from a common ancestor, myths branch out from an original story, accumulating mutations over time as they adapt to new environments and cultures. Mythologists recognise this parallel, and by analysing these similarities we can statistically estimate how myths dispersed and evolved. To achieve this, researchers applied phylogenetics, a tool originally used in evolutionary biology to map genetic relationships to trace the origins and spread of myths. For the dragon study, this approach generated over 40 million trees of statistical data, and the results? A consistent answer emerged again and again, pointing to the same origin and dispersal pattern for the dragon myth. The results of the research revealed something remarkable. The dragon myth does indeed have a single point of origin in both place and time. However, just because we can trace the myth to a specific source, this doesn't completely rule out the idea that the image of the dragon could have emerged independently in multiple cultures, perhaps as part of the shared human psyche, in line with a Jungian archetype. To test this, researchers compared all the mythological data without considering their geographic or temporal origins. The outcome was striking. There was a high degree of similarity among all the myths. This result greatly reduced the probability that dragons are merely a universal archetype. In fact, the findings were statistically stronger than what is seen in many phylogenetic studies in biology. The reason for this is that a clear phylogenetic signal appeared in the data. In other words, the spread of the dragon myth closely followed the patterns of early human migrations. This alignment strengthens the conclusion the dragon myth originated from a single source and spread across the world as humans dispersed. Before revealing where and when this source existed and how the myth travelled across the globe, let's first summarise one of the most iconic dragon stories from India, the Vedic tale of Vrtra. Vrtra was a mighty dragon and the possessor of all water, holding back the rains needed for crops to grow and for people to survive. The warrior storm god Indra, lord of wind and thunder, rose to confront Vrtra. The two clashed high in the clouds, and as they fought, thunder roared, lightning flashed, and fierce winds swept across the land. Finally, Indra struck Vrtra down with thunderbolts and divine weapons. When Vrtra was slain, the waters were released, bringing the life-giving rains that nourished the earth and fed the people. This story, found in the Rig Veda, one of the world's oldest texts, shares a striking similarity to the Chinese myth of benevolent dragons bringing water to the land. Yet there is a key difference. In the Chinese myth, dragons are heroes. In the Indian myth, the dragon becomes the villain. This shift highlights how a single ancient story can evolve differently across cultures, yet still preserve its core elements. And with this understanding of how the Chinese and Indian myths are connected, we can now examine where and when the dragon myth first emerged, and how it spread with humanity across the world. The dragon myth is believed to be at least 75,000 years old, with its origins traced back to South Africa. There it first appeared as a chimera-like creature, part snake and closely tied to water. In this region we find the ancient rain snake myth, one of the oldest mythological layers we know of, and likely the earliest example of a dragon legend. Around 65,000 years ago, as humans migrated out of Africa, this myth travelled with them. It spread eastward through the Near East and eventually reached the Far East. The dragon of these early myths was described as a giant snake with the head of another species adorned with ears as horns, patches of human hair and scales, and astonishingly it could fly. It was often regarded as a storm god or storm-associated creature believed to bring floods. By around 60,000 years ago, the myth had reached China, though the oldest archaeological evidence of Chinese dragons comes much later, from the Neolithic tomb of Shishuipo, dating back only 6,000 years. Over time, as the myth spread back into the Near East and north into Siberia, it mutated. Around 50,000 years ago, the dragon lost some of its features, becoming more snake-like and aggressive, often cast as the villain of the story. During the last glacial maximum, massive migrations allowed this Siberian version of the myth to spread into North America. Meanwhile, it also began moving southward from China toward Oceania. However, rising sea levels initially prevented the myth from reaching Australia. Then around 12,000 years ago, the Younger Dryas event caused sea levels to drop again, finally allowing the myth to enter Australia. This suggests that stories like the Australian rainbow serpent are likely closer to 10,000 years old rather than the 30,000, 50,000 years some scholars propose. At the same time, the myth crossed the Pacific and reached Mesoamerica by around 10,000 years ago, while dragon legends continued to expand across Africa and Eurasia. By this point, the dragon myth had spread almost worldwide, appearing in Australia, populating South and Central America, and even reaching Europe. In Europe, well before the Indo-European expansions, the dragon was still more serpent-like, often depicted as a giant snake with one or more heads. It had scales, sometimes even human traits, such as the ability to speak, display human habits, or possess a human-like head. These dragons lived in or near water, though they could travel away from it when needed. This incredible journey of the myth shows how a single ancient story evolved and spread alongside humanity, adapting to new cultures while retaining its core identity for tens of thousands of years. The dragon of these early legends was also believed to live in caves or underground, emerging as a ferocious and deadly creature that demanded human sacrifice. Yet despite its terrifying nature, the dragon was often susceptible to trickery and could be slain by cutting off its head or multiple heads. Around 8,000 years ago, the Proto-Indo-European language began to develop along with its associated cultures. Over the next few millennia, this new cultural framework spread across much of Europe, India, parts of Western Asia, and even North Africa, particularly around the Nile. As these cultures merged, the dragon myth evolved once again, this time incorporating elements such as cattle theft, a theme that became central to some of these new stories. However, not every region adopted this version. The Basque region of France and Spain, as well as the Arabian side of the Mesopotamian valley, preserved their own variations of the myth. Meanwhile, the European version of the dragon gradually shifted from a multi-headed monster to a single-headed beast. Some have speculated that the discovery of dinosaur fossils might have reinforced the belief in dragons, as people could have mistaken the massive bones for evidence of such creatures. While this idea is intriguing, research suggests that these fossils played little to no significant role in the creation or persistence of the dragon motif. Additional insights such as those presented in Blur's paper on the origins of dragons highlight further attributes of dragons' foul, poisonous breath. The ability to change size or shape, even the power to vanish completely. Some myths even hinted that dragons were offended by female menstruation. However, based on comprehensive research, these traits appeared far less frequently, around a 50-50 chance, compared to the core features of the myth, which had a 75% or greater probability of inclusion. For that reason, these attributes are considered secondary characteristics, not part of the original source myth. Likewise, associations with long life or immortality were rarely included, likely because such traits were difficult to define within oral traditions, and thus omitted from early stories. Finally, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the extensive time and research that went into creating this video. None of this would have been possible without the incredible support of my Patreons, whose contributions help fund the research, writing and production of content like this. If you'd like to support the channel, gain early access to videos, exclusive papers, discussions and more, you can find a link in the description. To all my supporters, thank you for your generosity, your thoughtful questions and for helping bring this project to life. To conclude this research, let me share with you a story of one of the younger Indo-European dragon myths, the tale of Ingwai, a fearsome three-headed, six-eyed serpent. One moonlit night, Ingwai stole cattle from the tribe of Yemo. Desperate to reclaim them, Yemo turned to his bravest warrior Trito, who vowed to retrieve the stolen herd. Before setting out, Trito made a sacrifice to the gods, drinking a potent, intoxicating beverage to gain divine strength. His journey led him across vast plains and into towering mountains, until at last he discovered the cave where Ingwai slept. At the entrance, cows grazed peacefully, drinking from a river that flowed out from the cave's mouth. Trito hid among the cattle, creeping closer until he was within striking distance. Then, with perfect aim, he hurled his spear into one of Ingwai's heads. The dragon awoke with a roar, lunging furiously at the warrior. Trito seized another spear and struck her second head, gravely wounding her. Weakened and enraged, Ingwai struggled to fight back, and with his final spear, Trito dealt the decisive blow. The great serpent retreated in agony to the dark recesses of her cave, leaving the surviving cattle unguarded. Trito quickly gathered the herd and led them home, where he was celebrated as the tribe's greatest hero. Over time, as the myth was retold across generations, the word for cattle was mistranslated as women. This linguistic shift explains why so many later tales feature dragons abducting maidens, a motif that persists even in modern legends. But returning to the research, what we have developed is a statistical model of the dragon myth, showing how its characteristics evolved over tens of thousands of years. Yet we must remember that the dragons of our ancestors were far more complex than any simplified version we can reconstruct. Remarkably, in Paleolithic Europe, archaeologists discovered 2 caves in the French Pyrenees containing the intact bodies of headless snakes, deliberately placed at the farthest ends of the caves, locations they could not have reached naturally. The skeletons were preserved, showing no signs of predation. Both caves also had rivers at their entrances. Piecing together this evidence, many scholars believe these findings represent an ancient ritual, dating back some 20,000 years, intended to symbolically kill or contain the dragon believed to dwell within these caves. This raises further questions. Why do we find so little visual evidence, rock carvings or paintings of dragon-like creatures outside regions like South Africa or Australia? One possibility is that representing certain animals, such as snakes or lizards, was taboo, just as early humans rarely depicted human figures in cave art. Another possibility is that dragons simply did not need to be depicted. Their power existed in oral tradition alone, carried forward as myths rather than images. This brings us to an important distinction: myths versus tales, a topic often discussed by scholars like Palme and La Mer de Veronte, in Essai sur la morphologie des contes africains. Palme highlights an important psychological distinction between myths and tales. Myths and tales differ not only in their content, but also in their treatment of time, place and characters, as well as in the rules and taboos associated with them. Because of this, it is possible that only myths were ever depicted in rock art, leaving no archaeological trace of tales. If the stories of dragons were considered tales rather than myths, this could explain why they were not commonly represented visually. After all, myths tend to portray things believed to be real, while tales are more symbolic or entertaining in nature. Yet despite the lack of visual evidence, we have enough data to confirm that dragons existed in the stories of our ancestors. By comparing the core African proto-narrative with the European proto-narrative, researchers have been able to statistically reconstruct a proto-dragon myth. At its heart, the dragon of ancient stories was described as a giant scaly snake with a single head living in or near water and inherently aggressive. This core identity of the dragon has endured through thousands of years and countless cultural transformations. So how do we explain the remarkable persistence of this core motif? Before answering that, let us turn to one of the oldest surviving dragon myths, the story of Australia's rainbow serpent, a tale believed to be around 10,000 years old. In the beginning, the earth was barren and lifeless. No animals, no plants, no movement. Beneath the earth, however, slept the great mother snake, the rainbow serpent. She had slept for countless ages until the day finally came for her to awaken. When she awoke, she burrowed up to the surface and emerged into the vast, empty land. Seeing its emptiness, she decided to transform it with her magic. She summoned endless rain, and as she slithered across the land, her winding tracks filled with water, forming rivers, lakes and seas, while the earth pushed up into hills, valleys and mountains where she passed. In some places, milk from her breasts seeped into the ground, making the land fertile. Here plants, trees and flowers began to grow for the first time. Pleased with the world she had created, the rainbow serpent awakened the other sleeping creatures beneath the earth. She brought the mammals to their homes, dingoes to the desert, kangaroos to the bush, and tree frogs to the rainforest. She woke the birds, eagles to the mountains, galahs to the billabongs, and emus to the wide plains. Finally she called forth the water creatures, barramundi to the river's frogs, to the shallow ponds, and turtles to the lagoons. Through her movements, life spread across the land, and the once empty earth became vibrant and alive. A world forever shaped by the rainbow serpent's magic and power. And at last the rainbow serpent woke the insects, the ants, beetles, spiders and scorpions. She showed each of them the rock's crevices and sandy places best suited for their homes. When all the animals of the earth had settled into their places, the rainbow serpent awoke 2 humans, a woman and a man. She led them to a place abundant with food and water, and as they ate and drank, she taught them the sacred law by which they must live. Her teaching was simple yet profound. They must respect all living things, honour the earth, and treat the rocks, waters and land as sacred. When her work was done, the rainbow serpent told them that she would return beneath the earth to sleep again. But before she departed, she warned them, "You do not own the earth. You are merely its guardians. If you abuse the earth and break the law, I will return. And when I do, I will create a new world, one without humankind." This Australian story is striking because it portrays a snake-like being as the benevolent creator, a controller of water and life, shaping the earth in a way that resembles a flood myth, bringing water to barren land rather than land emerging from water. It is an almost inverted reflection of the Abrahamic Garden of Eden story, where God is good and the snake is evil. Here, however, the snake is godlike and benevolent, yet capable of punishing humans if they fail to live in harmony with the world. But why then do dragons persist in this form across cultures worldwide? We've shown that they are not universal archetypes, not the result of discovering dinosaur fossils, and not inspired by everyday encounters with snakes, especially as dragon myths exist even in regions where snakes rarely grow longer than a metre or live near water. The answer likely lies in millions of years of evolution. Snakes are the oldest and most persistent predators of mammals on the planet. After the extinction of dinosaurs, mammals including our primate ancestors spread across the earth, while snakes remained one of their greatest threats, especially large constrictors. To survive, our ancestors evolved heightened visual systems capable of detecting subtle movements and identifying hidden dangers, especially snakes. This evolutionary arms race is one of the reasons humans developed colour vision and stereoscopic 3D depth perception. Thus, the dragon, a large, dangerous serpentine predator, became etched into our collective memory, passed down through countless generations as a story of fear, survival, and power. Research shows that primates possess exceptional snake detection abilities. Humans in particular can often spot a snake before consciously realizing it is there, and we can detect snakes faster than spiders or almost any other animal. Remarkably, this ability is present even in very young children. When a snake enters our field of vision, part of our attention is automatically drawn to it, reducing our ability to focus on anything else. Psychologists have also observed that our perception of an object's size or distance is influenced by how important or threatening we believe it to be. As a result, people tend to overestimate the size of snakes, and this perceptual bias likely contributed to the larger-than-life nature of dragons in myth. Now combine this with the fact that emotionally intense or frightening stories are far easier to remember. Wrap a terrifying predator in a dramatic or inspiring tale, and you create a story that sticks in human memory and spreads as people migrate across the globe. In short, humans are hardwired to notice snakes extremely quickly even before conscious thought. We naturally exaggerate their size and danger. And when snakes are placed in vivid, fear-inducing stories, those stories become far more memorable and transmissible than ordinary tales. Which, if you think about it, might be why you've forgotten to click the like and subscribe button. Unlike a dragon or a snake, the button isn't scary, but pressing it really helps this channel grow. Don't forget the notification bell too, it's right over there. Thank you so much if you do click it. Your support means a lot. Now let's turn to the oldest myth we know, the rain snake of South Africa. Although we don't have a complete story preserved, we do have rituals intertwined with the myth. Much of what we know comes from an interview with a bushman in the mid-19th century, who explained the meaning of ancient paintings found in the Lesotho region of southern Africa. This area where the Sahongong River meets the Senkyu was visited by explorers who, together with local bushmen, uncovered these depictions. From this encounter, the myth of the rain snake was shared with early mythologists, giving us a rare glimpse into one of humanity's oldest surviving dragon traditions. Here is an enhanced image of a rock painting depicting hunters alongside several quadrupeds. At first glance, these animals might resemble rhinoceroses, but according to the Bushman informant, they were actually water animal snakes. This claim initially seems puzzling. The Bushman clarified that the creatures were not wildebeest warthogs or even hippopotamuses, yet the word snake was indeed correctly translated. Adding to the mystery, a long line extending from the top animal's nose appears to be a rem, a long leather rein traditionally made of ox hide. Equally intriguing is that the scene is set underwater. The small lines surrounding the figures may represent fish or sharp cuts. Closer examination reveals that while some parts of the painting seem to depict a hunt, others portray men who had died their spirits, now dwelling in the rivers. Still others show living men in trance-like states, clapping, bleeding from their noses and performing a ritual dance. A second clearer painting shows men dancing, the trance dance clapping their hands, bleeding from their noses and interacting with a giant snake. The reem is again present and numerous cuts are drawn around the snake. According to the Bushman's account, this scene represents a ritual taking place underwater in the spirit world. The snake depicted is clearly symbolic rather than realistic. Its head is 3 or 4 times larger than those of its captors. The ritual seems to involve people entering an altered state so intense that it caused nosebleeds. Similar paintings of serpents are also found in the Southern Free State and Northern Eastern Cape provinces of South Africa. These serpents are depicted as enormous, sometimes bearing tusks or antelope-like ears, emphasizing that they were far from ordinary creatures. Interestingly, some of these painted serpents themselves appear to have nosebleeds and cuts on their bodies. These markings are interpreted as ritual wounds performed to make the rain fall. Importantly, the snake was not believed to contain rain, but rather that rain would come after the ritual was performed upon it. This belief may stem from the seasonal behaviour of snakes, which emerge in spring after winter inactivity, the same time of year that rains typically arrive. Thus, the snake became a ritualistic rain animal, coincidentally linked to spring rains, and central to ceremonies involving rivers, trance dancing and bloodletting. Although the exact cause of the trance states and nosebleeds remains uncertain, what we see in these depictions is clear. An animal, a snake serpent, or what we would call a dragon, deeply connected to water rain and fertility. In these ancient South African rituals, the creature is portrayed alongside quadrupeds, symbolising its role in bringing rain to the land. Here in southern Africa is likely where the dragon myth began. The dragon was associated with water, often described as having the head of another species, perhaps a lion or an antelope horns, ears, even patches of human hair all atop the body of a colossal snake. Far from being a purely malevolent creature, this early dragon was a benefactor, bringing rain, ensuring crops would grow and sustaining life. As this myth spread out of Africa, it evolved. In China, the dragon retained its role as a benevolent rainbringer, still linked to water and fertility. As the story travelled back through the Near East and into Europe, dragons in early myths were associated with creation and chaos, alike often connected to the stormy primeval seas. Over time, these dragons transformed into figures like Tiamat, Typhon, Jormungandr and Vertra, all sharing traits of the water-associated chaotic serpent. When the myth reached Australia, the South African rain snake became the rainbow serpent, credited with shaping the land and placing water upon the earth. Later, as it spread into Mesoamerica, traces of the Chinese dragon's appearance and symbolism emerged in Central American cultures, where serpent deities like Quetzalcoatl bore striking similarities. The dragon myth is one of humanity's most enduring and widespread motifs, likely dating back at least 75,000 years, and possibly as far as 130,000 years to our most ancient ancestors. Its persistence speaks to its power. It is a story born from our deepest evolutionary fears. In Paleolithic Europe, the motif remained so significant that rituals involving snake beheadings in caves were performed symbolically slaying the dragon that represented danger and death. Over millennia, the dragon changed from a revered rainbringer to a fearsome beast, and eventually in Indo-European tradition the dragon became an enemy, to be defeated, giving rise to the familiar knight versus dragon tale, where a hero rescues a maiden from the monster. Of course, this video only scratches the surface of the topic. There is so much more to explore the rain snake Paleolithic snake rituals and the deeper evolution of dragon slayer myths. If you'd like to see dedicated videos on these subjects, let me know in the comments below. To me, this subject is endlessly fascinating. It intertwines creation myth, survival instincts, fear, power, and the profound influence snakes held over our ancestors' minds. Many of us today rarely think about how such ancient fears shaped our stories, yet they remain with us in myth and legend. I hope researchers in the future can expand on this work, examining more motifs across more regions to refine this analysis and deepen our understanding of how dragon myths evolved and persisted for so long. For now, though, I hope you enjoyed this journey. Thank you so much for your support, feedback and comments, and an especially big thank you to my Patreons. Your contributions make research like this possible. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Until next time, stay safe and well. This is Crackenford. Few mythical creatures are as iconic as the dragon, a figure that appears in legends, mythology and folklore across the world. Every culture seems to have its own interpretation of what a dragon is, and over time these stories and the dragons themselves have changed dramatically, taking on vastly different forms depending on the region. Today we're diving into the history of dragons, exploring both the differences and similarities of these mercurial monsters across cultures. Before we go any further, a quick word from today's sponsor, Wonder, an AI art-generating app that transforms words into artwork in just seconds. Simply enter keywords or prompts describing what you'd like to see, choose an art style, and Wonder will generate multiple pieces for you to pick from. You can download your favourites in high resolution, or try again until you get the perfect result. The more specific and detailed your prompts, the better your artwork will be. It's a fantastic tool whether you need custom artwork or just want to bring a creative idea to life. Personally, I've been having fun using it to create unique Danny DeVito fan art. Here's a collage of some of my favourites so far. If you'd like to try Wonder, click the link in the video description for a free trial of the premium version, which includes unlimited art generation, no ads, faster rendering, and over 20 extra art styles to choose from. So why not give it a go and start creating your own awesome artwork today? Now, when we think of dragons in modern fantasy, the winged fire-breathing beast is probably the most common image that comes to mind. But as we'll soon see, that wasn't always the case. To understand how dragons came to look and behave as they do today, we need to look back through history and across cultures to see where these myths began and how they evolved. To trace the origins of dragon stories, we must travel thousands of years back in time and across many continents. The English word dragon comes from the Greek word drakon. In ancient Greece, there were numerous creatures classified as dragons, but these were not the winged, fire-breathing monsters we often imagine today. Instead, Greek dragons were much closer to enormous serpents. At their core, they were giant snake-like creatures, often with multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth and sometimes multiple heads. In Greek mythology, dragons were typically found in two key locations. 1. Near water, especially sacred springs which they would guard. 2. Guarding treasures or sacred places such as a grove or a hidden sanctuary, meant to be kept from prying eyes. Some of the most famous examples include Raten, the Colchian dragon, which appears in the story of Jason and the Argonauts guarding the legendary Golden Fleece in the Grove of Ares. Ladon, also known as the Hesperian dragon, who guarded the golden apples in the garden of the Hesperides encountered during one of Heracles' labours. The Lernaean Hydra. Another of Heracles' foes, a serpent-like creature with 9 regenerating heads. Whenever one was cut off, 2 more would grow in its place. Greek mythology contains dozens of named dragons, most of which were associated with water, and tasked as guardians or enforcers of divine punishment. There were also a few exceptions to the typical serpent form. Medea's chariot was pulled by 2 flying serpents, and Demeter's chariot was carried across the sky by 2 winged serpents, showing that even in Greek myth the dragon's form was not fixed but fluid and adaptable. The term dragon was once far broader than it is today. In ancient Greek mythology, creatures such as Cetus, Scylla, Typhon and Echidna were all considered types of dragons. Ironically, one of the biggest influences on medieval European dragons came from a creature in Greek mythology that looked the least like a dragon, the Chimera. The Chimera offspring of Typhon and Echidna was a hybrid monster made up of 3 animals: the front half of a lion, the middle and hind legs of a goat, and a serpent's head forming the tail. One distinctly dragon-like trait of the Chimera was that its goat head could breathe fire. We know this myth influenced medieval dragon imagery because artists who depicted the legend of St. George and the dragon often used Hellenistic and Roman artwork of Bellerophon, slaying the Chimera as templates. When you compare the two side by side, the similarities are striking: the posture of the hero, the stance of the beast, even the overall composition of the scene. This connection leads directly into the medieval European dragon. During the Middle Ages, dragons became the monster of choice in European storytelling. This shift was influenced both by Christianity, where dragons symbolised evil and chaos, and by Greek and Roman myths that portrayed serpentine creatures as dangerous adversaries. These stories followed a familiar pattern. A brave knight in shining armour embarks on a quest. A fearsome dragon terrorises a town, kidnaps a maiden, or demands sacrifices. The hero slays the dragon, rescuing the damsel or the townspeople. This period marked a dramatic change in how dragons were viewed. Instead of guardians of treasure or sacred places, dragons became villains, symbols of evil, greed, or sin. The dragon slayer motif wasn't limited to knights, saints, and holy figures, also frequently defeated dragons, turning the creature into a powerful Christian allegory for Satan or paganism. This transformation set the stage for the iconic fire-breathing winged dragons of medieval Europe, the image that still dominates modern fantasy today. The story of St. George and the Dragon perfectly illustrates the religious influence on medieval dragon myths. It begins with a village terrorised by a dragon, which demanded a tribute of livestock each year to spare the villagers from destruction. Eventually, the dragon's appetite grew beyond what the village could supply. Once the livestock was gone, the villagers had no choice but to begin sacrificing humans as tribute. Finally, the princess was chosen as the next sacrifice, At that moment, St. George, a renowned Christian soldier, arrived and vowed to save her. He faced the dragon, slayed it, and rescued both the princess and the village. One of the most famous versions of this story appears in the Golden Legend, a collection of saints' lives compiled by the Archbishop of Genoa, Jacobus de Voragine. In this retelling, the village is said to be Cyllene in Libya. The dragon lived in a lake near the village, and at first the people bargained with it by offering 2 sheep every day. But as the supplies dwindled, the tribute changed to 1 sheep and 1 human each day. Eventually lots were drawn to decide who would be sacrificed, and fate chose the king's daughter. The king tried desperately to save her, offering his wealth to the villagers as a bribe, but they refused, believing the sacrifice had to be made. The princess was led to the lake dressed as a bride and offered to the dragon. At that moment, St. George rode in. When the princess warned him to leave fearing for his life, he refused to abandon her. As the dragon emerged from the lake, St. George made the sign of the cross, charged forward on horseback, and pierced the dragon with his lance. Wounding the beast, he then took the princess's girdle and looped it around the dragon's neck, effectively taming it. St. George led the subdued dragon back to the village, where the people were astonished at the sight of their terrifying enemy turned captive. This story, retold countless times, became one of the most iconic Christian dragon-slaying legends. It cemented the dragon as a symbol of evil and chaos, while the hero, armed with faith and courage, became a defender of the innocent and a champion of Christian virtue. The villagers were terrified when St. George returned with the dragon. He promised to kill the beast on one condition: that everyone in the village, including the king, convert to Christianity and be baptized. The entire village agreed. After their conversion, St. George beheaded the dragon with his sword. On the very spot where the dragon died, the king built a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. At the church's altar, a spring appeared. Its waters were said to heal any illness or disease. But how did this legend, originating in the Roman Empire, spread throughout Western Europe? The answer lies in the Crusades. Many knights who fought in the First Crusade believed they had been aided by St. George himself during battles in Jerusalem. These stories spread across Europe, helping solidify the dragon-slaying saint as a cultural and religious icon. In fact, Christian iconography of a saint or soldier slaying a dragon on horseback predates St. George. As early as the 7th century, depictions existed, though some scholars debate whether the creatures shown were truly dragons. The earliest confirmed depiction of such an act is from the 10th century, showing St. Theodore slaying a dragon, earning him the title Theodore the Dragon Slayer. Over time, the dragon slayer motif transitioned from St. Theodore to St. George, who became the most famous figure associated with this legend. Religiously, these stories carried deeper symbolism. Dragons were more than just terrifying monsters. They often represented paganism, a threat to the virtue and faith of Christian maidens. Thus, the knight slaying the dragon symbolized Christianity's triumph over pagan beliefs. One of the more unusual tales is that of Margaret of Antioch, also known as Saint Marina the Great Martyr. Born into a pagan family, Margaret lost her mother at a young age, marking the beginning of a story that, like St. George's, intertwined themes of faith conversion and the power of Christianity over evil. In Egyptian mythology, Apep Apophis was the giant serpent of chaos, the eternal enemy of the sun god Ra. Each day Ra travelled across the sky in his solar barge. But when the sun set, Ra descended into the underworld, where a great battle with Apep would take place in the darkness. Though Apep repeatedly tried to devour Ra and prevent the sun from rising, Ra emerged victorious every night, ensuring a new sunrise each morning. Like many ancient dragons, Apep was serpent-like, bearing little resemblance to the winged, fire-breathing creatures we see in modern fantasy. As we've seen, dragons have changed dramatically throughout history, not just in appearance but also in character and symbolism. Today, the greedy gold-hoarding dragon, a creature of malice and contempt, is one of the most common tropes in fantasy. While some stories still portray dragons as noble protectors or wise guardians, these versions are far less frequent. The serpentine wingless dragons of ancient myth have all but disappeared, as have the smaller lizard-like dragons of medieval bestiaries. Modern fantasy dragons are grand, enormous beasts with vast wingspans capable of breathing fire and soaring through the skies. It's almost impossible to look at today's dragons and guess at their origins. What once resembled snakes or crocodiles has evolved into a composite creature, an amalgamation of traits from many different animals and myths. Despite never existing in reality, the dragon has become a creature entirely of its own, one of the most iconic figures in myth and fantasy alike. And finally, a big thank you to today's sponsor Wonder. If you'd like to try out their AI art generating app, check the link in the description for a free trial of their premium version. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. After Margaret's mother died, shortly after giving birth, she was raised by a Christian nurse. Margaret eventually took a vow to God which led her pagan father to disown her. She was then adopted by her nurse. The Roman governor Olybrius became infatuated with her and asked her to marry him on the condition that she renounce Christianity. Margaret refused his proposal, enraging Olybrius. In retaliation, she was imprisoned and tortured. One night in her cell, Satan appeared to her in the form of a dragon. Margaret prayed for protection, but at first her prayers seemed unanswered. The dragon swallowed her whole. Inside its stomach, Margaret made the sign of the cross. Instantly, the dragon writhed in agony as if his insides were being torn apart. Eventually, he opened his mouth and Margaret emerged unharmed. However, her triumph was short-lived. She was beheaded soon afterward for refusing to renounce her faith and marry Olybrius. This story reinforced the association of dragons with evil and demonic forces. Tales of dragons swallowing rich noblemen or women who had sinned were common in medieval Christian folklore. Another example is the story of Saint Marcellus, a bishop of Paris. In his tale, a dragon entered a small village and devoured a sinful noblewoman. Marcellus struck the dragon, repeatedly subdued it with a leash, and led it out of the village, banishing it to the forest forever. This story clearly shares similarities with St. George and the Dragon, further cementing the dragon slayer motif in Christian tradition. It was during the medieval period in Western Europe that depictions of dragons began to evolve dramatically. The towering multi-headed serpents of Greek and Roman myth slowly transformed into creatures that looked more like lizards or dinosaurs with 4 legs and bat-like wings. One theory is that these images were simply misdrawn in early medieval bestiaries, and honestly it's not hard to see why many of these illustrations still closely resemble serpents with added limbs and wings. By the 15th century, depictions of dragons had shifted noticeably. Earlier dragons, which were primarily serpentine, began to be illustrated with 4 legs and wings, resembling the modern fantasy dragon we know today. During this time, medieval bestiaries in Scotland, Ireland and England started distinguishing between different types of dragons. 4-legged dragons became the standard dragon. 2-legged dragons were classified as wyverns. Both dragons and wyverns were widely used in heraldry, appearing on crests, coats of arms and banners. The Welsh flag, for instance, famously features a red dragon. Early Welsh manuscripts even describe a legendary battle between a red dragon and a white dragon, the red symbolising the Britons and the white representing the Saxon invaders. Moving to Norse mythology, one of the most famous dragon tales is the story of Fafnir. The story begins with the dwarven king Hreidmar and his 3 sons Fafnir, Regin and Otter. All 3 brothers had the ability to shapeshift. Otter often took the form of an otter while fishing. One day, while fishing, Otter was killed by Loki, who mistook him for an ordinary otter. Loki, travelling with Odin and Honir, presented Otter's pelt as a trophy to King Hreidmar, only to discover that Otter was the king's son. Enraged, Hreidmar and his sons captured Loki and demanded a ransom of gold to cover Otter's entire skin. Odin agreed, but it was Loki's responsibility to gather the ransom, as he was the one who caused the tragedy. Loki recalled hearing of a giant pike living in the same river, a creature said to hoard treasure. The fish was none other than the dwarf Andvari in disguise. Loki caught Andvari, forcing him to surrender all his gold, including a cursed ring Andvaranaut which would bring death and misfortune to anyone who possessed it. Loki forced Andvari to return to his true form and lead him to his treasure, which was hidden behind a waterfall. Andvari revealed that his immense wealth came from a magical ring called Andvaranaut. He begged Loki to take all the treasure but leave him the ring. Predictably, Loki took everything, including the ring. When Loki returned to Hreidmar to pay the ransom for Otter's death, he handed over the entire treasure as well as the ring. But before Loki left, Andvari cursed the ring, declaring that it would bring misfortune and death to all who possessed it. The curse quickly began to take effect. Fafnir and Reginn, consumed by greed, grew resentful of their father Hreidmar. Eventually their desire for the treasure became too great, they murdered their father. After the deed, Fafnir transformed into a dragon to guard the hoard for himself. He drove Reginn away and remained in dragon form, terrorising nearby villages and poisoning the land around his lair so that no one would dare to approach. That is until the arrival of Sigurd, the hero of the Volsunga saga. Reginn, seeking vengeance and treasure, helped Sigurd reforge his father's broken sword Gram. In exchange, Sigurd vowed to slay Fafnir. Odin, disguised as an old man, advised Sigurd to dig several trenches to collect Fafnir's blood and to ambush the dragon from a pit as he slithered to the stream where he drank water. When Fafnir appeared, Sigurd drove Gram deep into the dragon's shoulder. Mortally wounded, Fafnir demanded to know who had struck him and who had sent him. Realising who Sigurd was and that his own brother Reginn had betrayed him, Fafnir cursed them both with his dying breath.